Welcome to your town meeting. The town clerk has informed me that we have a quorum of at least 50 people. I declare the 2016 special town meeting is in session. To honor the work that our service members do for our country every day, the town meeting invocation will be read by Kara Duquette, Lieutenant Colonel, United States Marine Corps, retired, who is presently the Director of Military Family Housing at Westover Air Force Base. Ms. Duquette.
We have come together in civil assembly as a community in a tradition that is older than our Commonwealth itself. We come together to make decisions about our community. As we deliberate, let us advocate for our positions, but not at the expense of others. Let us remember that there is an immense gap between saying, I am right, and saying, I believe I am right, and that our neighbors with whom we disagree are good people with hopes and dreams as true and as high as ours. And let us always remember that in the end, caring for each other in this community is of far greater importance than any differences we may have.
Thank you. I now welcome Longmeadow High School senior Deirdre Duquette. Ms. Duquette was our high school's representative to Massachusetts' Girls State. At Girls State, can you hear me now? I welcome, is that better? I welcome Longmeadow High School senior Deirdre Duquette. Ms. Duquette was our high school's representative to Massachusetts Girls State. At Girls State, she was elected Attorney General and chosen as one of 2 girls to represent Massachusetts at Girls Nation in Washington, D.C. this past summer. She will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise and remain standing. And in case you don't know it, it's right there.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. Kindly remain standing and offer a moment of silence to both remember and honor veterans who have sacrificed for our country. Thank you. I welcome you to our town meeting, our town's legislative body. To any first-time voters and to our visitors, I offer a special welcome. I have some general housekeeping announcements and some rules of procedure to mention before we get to discussion of the warrant articles. The fire marshal has informed me that in the event of a fire alarm or any other kind of emergency, the exits are clearly marked. The gym is broken into 4 sections, A, B, C, and D. The rear of the gym on my left, A, goes out to the gym and turns left, exits through the cafeteria. The rear of the gym on my right goes to the rear of the gym, turns right, exits through the main entrance. The front of the gym on my left goes to the front of the gym, turns right, and exits. The front of the gym on my right, section D, goes to the front of the gym, turns left, and exits out the pool entrance. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Those in the auditorium, if we have anybody in an overflow, will exit to the back of the room and use the main entrance. Should you need a hearing assistive device, please inform a teller, somebody with a name tag or one of the clerks in front, and we will get a hearing assistive device to you for loan. The back of the warrant includes a general list of rules of procedure that will follow. The rules of procedure follow Massachusetts general laws, our town charter, our bylaws, and a book called Town Meeting Time. Warrant articles are general warnings to the town about what will be discussed. We vote on motions that are made to take some action or to not take a certain action. The oral motion may be different than the printed article. To speak, wait for recognition from me, the moderator, then state your name and address. All remarks must be made or addressed to the moderator. There are 3 microphones in the center of the room, in the aisle. A center microphone for elected or appointed board members, right over here, and for those who are speaking on behalf of the board or for lead citizen petitioners. 1 microphone at the center of the room is marked with a green sign saying "in favor." It is for speakers who are in favor of a motion. The other on the opposite end is marked red with the word "opposed" on it. That's for speakers who are in opposition to a motion. The third in the middle is yellow for those who have questions or motions. And they are for speakers who wish to make another motion or who have questions. There is no cross-examination. If you have multiple questions, ask them all at once and I will direct them to the person they need to go to. Citizens wishing to speak shall line up at each microphone and I shall alternate recognition among each line. Whenever possible, preference shall be given to those who have not yet had a chance to speak. Occasionally, members of the Select Board and Finance Committee will request to speak on behalf of the board. I will recognize them in turn with the flow of the lines of citizens' microphones. I shall ask that the lead speakers on main motions keep presentations to 5 minutes, thereabouts, and subsequent speakers to thereabout 2 minutes. All deliberation involves the sharing of accurate, relevant information, weighing of advantages and disadvantages. It ought to end when no new information is available. And I therefore ask that all speeches be clear, brief, civil, and relevant. Should speeches wander from their point or become repetitive, I will interrupt to encourage the speaker to come to the point. Motions for the previous question to stop discussion and come to a vote are in order once 5 have spoken in favor and 5 against, as per our bylaw. If there are not 5 who wish to speak on either side, the motion may still be made. These motions require a 2/3 majority vote to end debate and come right to the vote on the main motion. All visitors must sit in the designated section, including the credentialed media. That's this section on my left. Non-voter town employees are sitting in the first section bleacher and on the first row floor to my left. Should we need to hear from any non-voters with expertise or specialized knowledge, I will permit some non-voters to speak. No non-voters have thus far received any permission to speak. The rules of procedure permit some kinds of talk and limit others. Though we are in a gym, we shall not cheer or jeer, clap or hoot or holler. It just wastes time. Should there be a need to call a speaker to order, I will do that. You will be directed to come to order. Town meeting time indicates that should a participant not come to order, the moderator shall request the person to withdraw from the meeting and may direct a police officer to escort the person out of the building. So please, let's stay civil. When we come to a vote, I will ask you to raise your blue voting cards. Please keep them raised until I instruct you to lower them. We have 5 articles on which motions require a 2/3 majority. I'll inform you of what's needed at each vote. Should there be a need for a hand count, the clerk has sworn in tellers who will act in pairs, and I'll provide instruction on that should we need to do that. So with your patience, goodwill, careful listening, and brevity of speech, we shall finish at a reasonable hour with reasonable decisions. We shall next consider Article number 1. Ms. Angelides.
I move the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 for purposes of paying 1/2 of the $200,000 short-term borrowing issued in May of 2016 as part of the final financing of the Longmeadow High School project.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there a finance? Oh, I'm sorry, you may speak to your motion.
The town's final share of the Longmeadow High School project costs were $278,206, more than the original $44 million $100,000 borrowed. $78,206 was appropriated towards the final town's costs in Article 5 of the May 10, 2016 annual town meeting. $200,000 was borrowed short-term to take advantage of low short-term interest rates.
Ms. Angelides, they can't hear. Could you speak real close to the microphone?
I'll start over. The town's final share of the Long Meadow High School project costs were $278,206, more than the original $44,100,000 borrowed. $78,206 was appropriated towards the final town's cost in Article 5 of the May 10, 2016 annual town meeting. $200,000 was borrowed short-term to take advantage of the low short-term interest rates. This appropriation would reduce the amount of short-term borrowing by 1/2, with the remaining portion to be paid in FY 2018.
Is there a Finance Committee recommendation?
The Finance Committee is recommending this article.
Thank you. Any questions? The Finance Committee recommends this. It's printed in the warrant. Yes. All right. Seeing no one at the mic, we shall come directly to a vote. A yes vote authorizes the appropriation. All those in favor, please raise your blue cards. Is the clerk present? The clerk is not present. We shall wait for the clerk to come in. I apologize. It was just practice. You're getting your arms warmed up. We have somebody looking for the clerk. You need the clerk. Thanks. Has the World Series started yet? No, the clerk must be present. I apologize, everyone. The clerk must be present for the recording of the vote. The clerk must be out in the back helping people to check in. Here she is. She's coming in. Thanks for your patience, everyone. So again, this is a motion to approve the article as printed in the warrant under Article 1. Ready? Yeah. Okay. All those in favor, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your blue cards. The ayes have it. The motion is approved, majority affirmative vote. Ms. Angelides, Article 2.
I move that the town vote to take no action on Article 2.
Motion has been made and seconded.
Supplementing funding for FY 2017 unemployment insurance is not necessary at this time due to September's unemployment costs drastically dropping.
I see no questions. The motion is to take no action on Article 2. A yes vote means the town takes no action on this. All those in favor of taking no action, raise your blue cards. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your blue cards. The ayes have it. The motion is approved by unanimous affirmative vote. Article 3, Ms. Angelides.
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $55,000 to transfer into the town's Operation Stabilization Fund, established by vote of town meeting on November 8, 2003, pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 5B.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. You may discuss it.
With the withdrawal.
As a reminder, oral motions may differ from the printed warrant article. This one does differ. The original article said 30,000. The motion was for 55,000. Ms. Angelides, you may speak to it.
With the withdrawal of Article 2, additional funds are now available to be transferred into the town's reserves. The amount of town's reserves has been critiqued by Moody's as being relatively stable, but below the national and state average for the rating category of AA2. The finance director has calculated the town's general reserves, certified free cash as of July 1st, and the balances in the Operational Stabilization Fund as a percentage of operational revenues as of July 1st, 2016 to be 6.48%, near equal to last year's percentage of 6.42%. The Select Board's policy calls for the measurement to be between 5 and 10%. Approval of this article will further enhance the town's general reserves and would be looked upon favorably by the ratings agencies.
Finance Committee recommendation?
The Finance Committee did not consider the new amount, the amended amount of 55,000. We did recommend the original 30,000 amount, so the Finance Committee doesn't have any position on the new 55,000.
This vote requires a 2/3 majority. I see there's a question. Yes, sir.
Michael Calick, 458 William Street. The article in the warrant indicates $30,000. Now, the question is whether or not you can raise it by $50,000. In other words, the town is on notice that the amount in the article is $30,000. And if it was less than the $30,000, that would be one thing. But my question is whether or not if you exceed the amount in the article here, $50,000, is whether it's a proper motion.
Thank you for the question. The increase is by $25,000, and so you're asking if I have ruled that it is acceptable to raise it by that much. Does that answer your question? Any other discussion? Then we shall come directly to a vote. This requires a 2/3 majority. All those in favor, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. The motion is approved by 2/3 declaration. We shall now turn to Article 4. Ms. Angelides.
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $120,576 from the FY 2017 Community Preservation Fund revenues for CP Fund Balance Reserves for Open Space, which would be $40,192, CP Fund Balance Reserve for Community Housing, $40,192, and CPA Fund Balance Reserve for Historic Preservation, $40,192.
Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded. Finance Committee recommendation?
Yeah, number 4.
The Finance Committee recommends Article 4.
Thank you. Floor is open for discussion.
Do you want me to read the explanation?
If you want
Okay.
to speak to it, yeah.
The Community Preservation Act, CPA, requires town meeting to appropriate or reserve for future appropriation at least 10% of the estimated annual CPA revenue for acquisition initiatives for each of the following 3 categories: open space, community housing, and historic preservation. Approval of this article will satisfy the requirement for FY 2017. Currently, the FY 17 state matching share is estimated at 19% of our current year's estimated surcharge of $337,747, or that's $64,172,000. Thank you.
Further discussion? Mr. Lacusa, are you looking to speak? Oh, okay. Seeing no further discussion, we shall now come to a vote directly on Article 4. This requires a simple majority. A yes vote raises and appropriates the funds. All those in favor, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. The majority has it. The motion is approved by majority affirmative vote. Article 5.
Article 5. I move that the town vote to accept the DPW Committee Site Recommendation Report dated September 2016.
Motion's been made and seconded. This is a report. We shall have a brief presentation and then come directly to a vote.
The
Mr.
nine-member
Mis-
DPW Task Force Committee, the nine-member DPW Task Force Committee appointed the select...
Mr. Lucusa, please speak directly into the
Okay,
microphone.
let me just, I'm not that tall, but just a little shorter. The nine-member DPW Task Force Committee, appointed by the Select Board in March of 2016, reviewed potential sites and recommended that the Grand Meadows Tennis Club on Dwight Road as the preferred site for the construction of a new DPW facility for the town of Long Meadow.
Mr. Cove, you can make the report. Oh. Task Force Committee Chair, Mr. Cove.
My name is Chris Cove. I'm a town resident, 36 Fairhill Drive. I was appointed as the task force chairman. We've been meeting since March of this year. We've had over 15 meetings, and I just want to run you through a couple of quick slides to let you know how we came to the conclusion of our report. So this is the
Speak right
mission statement. And really, our two edicts are to recommend a site for the new Department of Public Works facility. And once the site is obtained and secured by the Select Board, we will also oversee the construction and the commissioning of that facility. We have 9 members, all from the community. Myself, Arlene Miller, Dave Appleman, Mary Beth Morris, Dave Horowitz, Peter Greenberg, Mary Pat O'Connor, Doug Jangro, and Ryan Shanks. So we've been meeting about twice a month since March. And we, long story short, went through, we took a good look at 29 publicly owned, privately owned, and 7 publicly owned sites that were large enough to support a DPW facility. We put a lot of effort, several meetings, into trying to keep the DPW down on Pondside Road, and we ran into obstacle after obstacle. And this is a quick summary of those. But the main obstacle is that it's now in a, it's been rezoned recently, not actually recently, in the last 10 years. And it is in a 100-year floodplain, which brings in all sorts of issues and difficulties to construct on that site. So really, that prevented us from pursuing any sites down east of I-91. This is just a quick slide. We spent quite a bit of time putting this matrix together. The effort was significant by a lot of members of the committee, and just want you to understand that we didn't take this lightly, and we tried to put a lot of emphasis on social factors, but all this information can be found on the DPW website, on the town site. But as you can see, we went through a lot of effort, considered a lot of different categories, and came to our conclusion. This is a very preliminary sketch of what the DPW may look like as cited on the Grand Meadows site. It fits well. There actually may be some room for some other facilities, but that's way down the road that we have to figure out. But we thought it was a good fit and the proper place for this facility. And just to calm people down a little bit, this is a brand new DPW facility in Bourne, Massachusetts that is constructed by the company that we are partnering with. And you can see it looks quite a bit different than the DPW we currently have. That's it.
Are you all set?
That's all.
All right. This is a report. It requires a simple majority. A yes vote accepts or receives the report. All those in favor, please raise your blue cards. There's no discussion on a report. This is just accepting or rejecting a report. This is a yes vote. All those opposed, please raise your cards. Thank you. The yes vote is approved by majority affirmative vote. We shall now come to Article 6.
Okay, Article 6, I move that the town vote to transfer from available funds in the treasury the sum of $277,100 to the following accounts. Capital account for the fire truck replacement, $27,000. Capital stabilization fund, $127,500. Fiscal year 17 operating budget account OPEB liability, $122,600.
Motion's been made and seconded. You may speak to the motion.
As part of the fiscal year 2017 budget process, the Select Board had to decrease certain capital and operation budget appropriations in order to produce a balanced budget at the May 2016 annual town meeting. $27,000 was cut from the town's annual appropriation for fire truck replacement. $127,500 was cut from the town's fiscal year 17 capital appropriation goal set by the Select Board's policies, and $122,600 was cut from the town's annual appropriation goal set by the Select Board's policies to address the town's other post-employment benefits OPEB liability. An additional $48,000 was cut from the Department of Public Works Grounds Division, but is being funded in 2017 with accumulated student parking fees. Two-thirds of the vote, a two-thirds vote is required as to the stabilization fund.
Finance Committee recommendation?
Madam Moderator, at this time, we'd like to move to table this article until after the consideration of Article 11. The Finance Committee does not recommend the article as written.
I'm sorry, sir. You've made a motion to table it. I need to get a second. If there's a second, we can hear the motion to table. That motion has been made and seconded. The motion to table it until what? Forgive me. I wasn't prepared for that. Motion to table it until when?
Until after the consideration of Article 11.
Okay, so the motion is to table Article 6 until after Article 11. That's been seconded by someone? Thank you. You may speak to the motion to table this article.
Madam Moderator, thank you. The Finance Committee has an amendment that we wanted to propose to Article 6, but the amendment is dependent.
I apologize. I made an error. A motion to lay on the table is not debatable. That's why I keep the rule book with me. A motion to lay on the table requires a two-thirds vote. So we shall come directly to a vote on whether or not to lay the motion on the table until after Article 11. All those in favor of laying on the table, raise your cards. Thank you. All those opposed to laying on the table, raise your cards. Thank you. The motion is approved, majority two-thirds vote. We shall now come directly to Article 7 and take up, hold on one moment, Mr. Lacusa. Two-thirds was declared. Two-thirds was declared. Majority two-thirds, I apologize. Hold on one moment. We shall now take up Article 7. Mr. Lacusa.
Okay. Right. I move that the town vote to appropriate the construction of a new adult center at Bliss Park, and if so, to transfer from available funds in the Treasury the sum of $200,000 for the purpose of funding architectural and engineering services up to and including site analysis, site survey, geotechnical soil testing, programming study, traffic study, and schematic design for the new adult center. That's the motion.
Motion's been made. Is there a second? Second. Motion's been made and seconded. I shall now recognize Town Council Michael Schneider for some remarks.
Can everyone hear me? Great, thank you. Thank you, Madam Moderator. I want to be clear that an affirmative vote tonight in regard to Article 7 will not result in the construction of an adult center upon any portion of Bliss Park, the borrowing of money for construction upon Bliss Park, or a change in control of Bliss Park. Given what we presently know about the property, necessary steps to change control of Bliss Park have not yet taken place. By way of background, in February of 1934, the town voted to establish and use the subject property for a public playground and a public park under the control of the park commissioners. In order to change that use, the following three steps must occur. First, the park commissioners must find that some portion of the subject property is, quote, no longer needed, unquote, for purposes of a public park and public playground. Despite the park commissioners' vote approving of a new adult center in principle, they did not find that any certain property was, quote, no longer needed for public park and public playground purposes. In the event the park commissioners find that in the future, they would then need to inform the select board of that decision. Following the select board being notified, the select board would be obligated to place upon a new warrant a vote before town meeting to approve the transfer of the, quote, care, custody, management, and control of the land to the Council on Aging or the town itself for use as a new adult center. This would require 2/3 approval at town meeting. The town would also need to seek and obtain legislative approval from the general court, that's the legislature, in order to complete the transfer of the control of the property. That being said, an affirmative vote tonight would give the sense of the meeting on possibly using a portion of Bliss Park for non-public park and public playground purposes. It would also appropriate a sum of money for further study of that potential project. Thank you.
I will now recognize Mary Beth Bergeron.
Oh, I should read this second part.
Um,
The request of appropriations.
That's printed in the warrant.
Yes.
If we can, Mr. Lacusa, you can read the section that's in the warrant, and then we'll get to the lead petitioner on this, which is Mary Beth Bergeron.
Correct. The requested
Excuse me,
appropriation would continue the effort to develop a new adult center at Bliss Park that town meeting had previously committed $35,000 to at the 2014 annual town meeting via citizens petition, and $50,000 at the 2015 fall meeting. A committee appointed by the Select Board reviewed many prospective sites in Long Meadow and recommended a small part of Bliss Park near the basketball court as a site for the new adult center. The requested appropriation would continue the design process for that site.
I shall now recognize the task force chair, Mary Beth Bergeron.
I'm not as tall. My name is Mary Beth Bergeron. I live at 497 Inverness Lane here in town. In May of this year, the Select Board appointed a committee to further investigate sites in town for a new senior center to be constructed within the town boundaries. My team of individuals from a broad section of representation in our town has worked diligently throughout the summer, and we are here tonight to present to you our findings. Your first question might be, why do we need a new senior center? The demographics of our town are changing rapidly. In the year 2010, we had 2,991 seniors. In 2016, the census showed 4,446, literally a 60% increase in senior citizens in our town. We have approximately 3,300 acres of open space in the town of Long Meadow, over 300 of which is parkland. A new recreation center and senior center would need about 3 acres, less than 0.01% of our open space or 1% of our park space. In the site selection process, we looked at 10 properties. We looked at the old synagogue on William Street. We investigated the church at the corner of Williams and Redfern. We looked at the Greenwood Park site. We investigated Academy Drive. You know it as the Tower property. We looked at Wolf Swamp Fields. We looked at Turner Park, 2 locations within Turner Park. We investigated the Cordis property on Long Meadow Street and met with the library because there would have to be a merger of lands there. We looked at Laurel Park and we looked at Bliss Park. We considered the following factors: conservation issues, the size of the parcel, topography, traffic, neighborhood concerns, impact on sports fields, deed restrictions, infrastructure, and the neighborhood. Our goal was to take away nothing from anybody in this town. We visited with the assessor's office, we held discussions with Park and Rec, we met with library representatives, the Conservation Commission, Ward Engineering, the Historic District Commission, Storrs Museum. We met with a historian in town, Jim Moran, and of course we had many conversations with Amy Sada, the director of the Council on Aging. We reviewed plot plans, DPW streets and engineering, Article 97 requirements, the Frederick Olmsted map and original plans, Park and Recs, potential grants that might be available, the Dietz report, the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission report, and the findings of the town manager's Adult Center Committee. The site that we found that fit the needs of a senior center, a recreation and senior center in our town is Bliss Park at the southwest corner. That's what brings us here tonight. This park contains approximately 43 acres of land. We need about 3 acres. The location specific is the southwest corner of Bliss Park. For those of you who have dogs, you would be familiar with this corner. It is an abandoned section of the park with, there's haphazard parking on the dirt. There's multiple trees in this location. Some guy told me he lost his muffler there last week. It is in poor condition. It is, however, the parking for the ball fields, it is the parking for the baseball courts, and it is parking for the trail entrance that is in approximately this location. There is a buffer zone of about 34 acres of land in this location. Included in this location is Cooley's Brook, which runs through here and then dumps down under Laurel Street and enters into Laurel Pond, that I think is probably familiar to all of you. An addition of a recreation and adult center would greatly enhance this area. It would provide adequate parking for the trails and ball fields and the basketball court. There would be access to bathroom facilities at the park, which are sorely lacking when the pool closes down. The park would become ADA accessible, which would be nice for not just seniors, but those handicapped youth in our community that need access to the park. The new recreational center and adult center would be for everyone. The senior center now is open from 9 to 3 daily, and the average daily attendance is 105 people, most of whom carpool. During the day, when seniors are not using the gymnasium, it would be available for sports groups and youth. During the evening hours, the gym could be used by the library for meetings that they are not right now able to hold because they have insufficient space. The office areas could be used for meetings of sports teams, etc., the same as they are now at Greenwood Park. Sports teams could play basketball, pickleball, and volleyball. The baseball teams could also use the space for practice. These activities would be organized by the Park and Rec Department. Having a town recreational center and senior center in a park is by far not unheard of. Springfield, for example, has a senior center in Forest Park and is right now building one in Blunt Park. There are senior centers and parks in Marlborough, Acton, and other Massachusetts communities. Oddly enough, this is not a new idea for our town.
Ms. Bergeron, can you close up?
I will. The warrant article is essentially about funding of additional studies, determining whether this site actually really does work. We need monies for a traffic study. We need to hire a landscape architect with certified arborists. We need to have soil tests performed and a design firm hired. We hope that you will support the committee and allow funding for further studies of this particular parcel. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, no applause. Thank you. We have two more boards to hear from, the Select Board recommendation and the Finance recommendation, and then we shall open it up to the floor. So thank you for your patience, folks. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Forgive, Mr. Lacusa, before we begin, I would ask that all of the people who are in the back standing up kindly come to the front. We don't bite up here. There's plenty of seats. There's some seats over here and seats over here, because you can't vote unless you're seated. So please come and have a seat. Does the Select Board have a recommendation? You don't have a recommendation. Okay, so that makes things faster. We'll now turn to the Finance Committee recommendation. State your name in it. Mr. State your name. Your name.
Maury Garrett.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Moderator. The Finance Committee does not recommend Article 7. There were 4 factors that were involved. 2, the Finance Committee elected not to consider in detail, and 2, the Finance Committee did determine, weighed in the decision not to recommend Article 7. The first factor was the Finance Committee received information that a survey was taken on the satisfaction with the site in question, and that survey found that the majority were satisfied with the current senior center. The second factor that the Finance Committee considered was that the senior center was not determined to be an emergent or urgent priority with respect to some of the other projects and articles that were up for consideration. The Finance Committee did receive information on the controversial nature of the site versus other sites that were available. We did not use that as a determining factor in our decision. The Finance Committee also received information concerning the use of a park and whether or not the site is considered a park and all those issues, and we determined that those issues were also not appropriate to consider as factors in our decision not to recommend Article 7. What the Finance Committee's decision boiled down to was that with the questions that still exist as to whether the project can move forward, the Finance Committee did not feel that allocating the $200,000 towards further study of the site with that issue still in the air was appropriate. And for that reason, the Finance Committee does not recommend Article 7.
Thank you. I'm going to recognize the person at the yellow microphone first, and then we'll go to the person at the green microphone, and then to the red. Yellow first.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm Mike Henderson at 42 Williston Drive. I have 2 questions. First, I'd like to know what the town received for the $85,000 already spent on study. And secondly, whether there have been any significant capital investments and other improvements made to the existing senior center, and what would happen to those existing improvements that may have been made, and if you can perhaps indicate the dollar amounts of some of those improvements that may have been made. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Henderson. Is there someone here who can answer it? Mr. Crane?
Good evening, Stephen Crane, Town Manager. Could you just, I'm sorry, I was
So this is
chit-chatting.
the $85,000 that was spent? what has been done with that, and have there been other improvements, and what is the dollar amount of those other improvements? Is that right?
Yes, Madam Moderator, thank you.
Well, I believe there's about $30,000 left in in those original appropriations. The primary things were the first was by citizens. The first two were by citizens petition. One bit of that money paid for Pioneer Valley Planning Commission to do an initial feasibility study. Another amount was used to hire retain Dietz Architecture, which did a more detailed assessment of the current facility and did some initial planning as a part of the town manager's task force. That was the precursor to the select board committee. In terms of other improvements, town meeting has in the recent past funded additional improvements to the kitchen, for the installation of a walking path and some exercise equipment, some electrical system upgrades, new roof. So that was before my time. A new roof. So yes, improvements have been made. I think in terms of so those have been made. Is there did I
The
miss the
dollar
last part?
amount?
Ooh. Yeah. I can go back. The kitchen was about 50,000. The walking trail, I think the walking trail was 25 or something like that. See, I wasn't told there was going to be a quiz here tonight. I'm not adequately prepared. Can I actually? If it's going to influence your vote, I can actually go back and look it up and present the
And come back
information
later?
later. But if you want to just call me tomorrow, I can tell you in more detail.
All right. No, we're not going to have back and forth. So you made an answer to the question. We're going to move on then.
Okay, Madam Moderator, forgive me, but I'm not sure that the first part of the question was answered. All I heard is that a firm was hired. I did not hear any of the results of those studies. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Sure. Results.
Both of the reports that
Mr. Crane.
that we had done with the other appropriations are on. There's an Adult Center Building Committee page. That's a sub page to the Council on Aging page on our website, and all the reports are there. So we did receive 2 distinct documents as a result of those engagements.
At the green microphone.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My name is Dave Horowitz, 18 Circle Road. I'm chairman of the Park Commission. On September 19th, members of the Adult Center Building Committee, led by Ms. Bergeron, came to our regularly scheduled meeting and presented the findings of their site selection process. As Ms. Bergeron indicated, that process concluded the site at Bliss Park was most appropriate for the adult center. The park board deliberated significantly relative to that information. We understood that Bliss Park is approximately 40 acres. Laurel, on the other side of Laurel Street, is another 40 acres. We understood that the site required approximately 3 acres. What we liked most was that there would be no change to the existing facilities. The ball fields would remain, the basketball court would remain, tennis courts would be playable, the playground and pool would also remain. After more deliberation, we identified some significant benefits, many of which Ms. Bergeron had already mentioned. We really like the idea of the parking improvements. Right now, it's gravel parking, a little bit of a free-for-all. Paved parking with some order would make a lot of sense. An indoor gymnasium used for programming for seniors during the day would allow for programming from a park and rec perspective and youth perspective at night. The addition of concessions and potentially restrooms would benefit the entire area. We also like the idea of the seniors being on site during the day as good stewards for the community. Our 5-person board voted 5-0 to support the location at Bliss Park. Thank you.
Thank you. At the red microphone.
Yes, my name is Dr. William Harbison, 217 Farmington Road. Lived in Long Meadow for 40 years and sent all 3 of my kids to public schools here. I have 7 grandchildren. All that qualifies me, I think, to be senior proud. I actually saw one of those signs somewhere in Long Meadow. However, I am not proud of the plan that's currently outlined in Article 7 and the apparent lack of any permanent preservation of our town parks. I represent Long Meadow citizens to save our parks. A citizens group founded a month ago after we became aware of the plans for a senior center at Bliss Park. a petition of 385 signatures to save our parks from development was submitted to the Select Board. Everyone has been shocked and surprised to find out that there were plans to place a senior center at Bliss Park. It is also unclear what is actually being proposed. A senior center, as in the Senior Proud signs, an adult center, as was on the warrant, or a recreation center. There is also much misinformation circulating around.
Excuse me, Mr. Harbison. There's a presentation that's supposed to go along with your, thank you. I just want to make sure that's called up. I apologize for the interruption.
It's that important.
Well,
But,
if you prepared it, I want to make sure it's up.
I want to make one thing perfectly clear at the start. Our group is not, and I emphasize not, opposed to this project. We just don't want to place it on any Longmeadow Park land or open space now or in the future. Despite what many have been told, with some creative thinking and with the help of experienced architects and planners, a state-of-the-art green building can be constructed at the current site in Greenwood, and alternative temporary arrangements can be made for the seniors while the project is completed. It may cost a little more, but it can be built soon if the town is willing to pay for it. We believe that to place the senior center at Bliss Park would be the start of a slippery slope and would eventually degrade our parks. Consider what has already happened just in the last year. First, DPW proposed at Wolf Swamp, then senior center and senior housing at Turner
Please keep the
Park.
remarks relevant to this particular article. Thank you.
Then DPW and possible senior center at Laurel Park, and now Bliss Park for a senior center with 130 parking spaces, the size of Big Y, to be placed next to Bliss Road, one of the busiest streets in town. The project would also involve cutting down about 100 healthy and beautiful pine and oak trees. Also, there are serious questions which have been raised, including by the town's own legal counsel, about whether this park can even be legally developed at all. At a minimum, it will require 2/3 town vote at future town meetings, as was pointed out, and a 2/3 vote of the state legislature and possible sign-off by the governor. Again, we support the efforts of the seniors in our community to have a quality, affordable, state-of-the-art adult or senior center. However, we do not feel it or any other development should be on Longmeadow Park land or open space now or in the future. Our parks need to be preserved for future generations, for conservation and recreation, as Bliss Park has been for 82 years. Once the cork is loosened off the champagne bottle, who knows where it will flow. Let's not see senior proud turned into senior shame 10 years from now. We urge you to vote no on Article 7 tonight for the future preservation of all our sheriff's parks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to make sure that the presentation is accurate. Is it accurate now? All right, we shall turn to the person at the yellow microphone.
Hi, Matthew Miranda, 41 Woolworth Street. I've recently been attending the new junior high school meetings. Most of those have a bent towards combining them into one, that one being the Greenwood site, Glenwood site, whatever school that is. I would like to present a motion that we take no action on this until the junior high school thing is settled, because then that will open up
I'm sorry, sir,
William Street
that
School.
motion would be out of order because we can only handle what's here presented on the warrant tonight.
And I make a motion to, what did I just say?
We have a motion on the floor. The motion is something that you can approve or reject. It requires a simple majority.
I want to skip the vote. I forget the exact
Well-
words. What was the words? Table, thank you. I want this item to be
If
tabled.
something can be tabled, it can be picked up off the table. So tabling doesn't do away with it, as you wish.
Well, my goal would be to postpone it until the middle school situation is settled, because then they can just build at Williams Middle School. It's a lot more property.
We cannot, sir, we cannot do that.
I know
So
you
we-
can't do that, but you can
then-
table it,
then-
correct?
This motion could be tabled, yes, and it could be picked up off the table. and voted on at this town meeting.
All right,
And so therefore, if you want to table it, people table it until they get more information on something. We have a lot of people who wish to speak on this and who wish to vote on it. So you can, and laying it on the table requires a 2/3 majority as well. You've already spoken to this. That's out of order for a debate. Laying something on the table does not permit debate.
All right,
So-
and if we do table it, they can bring it up later. You cannot table it for more than just this meeting?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to turn to the person at the green microphone now.
Sal Feinstein, 471 Frank Smith Road. Not being the first speaker, I have the advantage of responding to a couple of remarks. I'm very disappointed in the Finance Committee's vote, and to save Bliss Park, we're not saving Bliss Park, we're beautifying Bliss Park. We're making it a better place for the town. The idea of it being a senior center, along with a recreational center, along with a cultural center. A long time ago, I sat on a long-range planning committee. Some of the people on that committee are sitting, or even standing, one right next to me, as a matter of fact. And we had looked at the idea of having the senior center at that time, perhaps coming closer to the center of town. It's on the books. I recall making it a combination of a teen senior center. Of course, it's just, I mentioned this at a meeting earlier, that the center as it's being proposed today will benefit Long Meadow, will benefit the town of Long Meadow, not just seniors. Seniors were once told, I once heard someone at one of the meetings ask the question, why do you want a senior center? We've got one at Greenwood Park. Well, we're not proposing that we want a senior center. We need a senior center. This has been going on for several years. I traced the history back to I don't know what decade, but the current study has been going on for 4 years. When are we going to get this senior center? I mean, I may not see the center.
No clapping, please.
I may not see the center, but I certainly would like to see the groundbreaking. I've lived probably almost as much as a senior as I did before. So please, don't postpone it. A vote tonight really is to continue the study. That's all we're asking. Those of you that oppose this at Bliss Park, you'll get another shot at it. Give us the vote tonight. Vote yes. That's the only right way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. We shall now turn, please, no clapping. There's someone at the red microphone.
Thank you. I'm here tonight because
Name and address, please.
Patrick Carnahan,
Thank you.
311 Farmington Road. I'm here tonight because I oppose warrant Article 7. While I do support the building of a senior center in Long Meadow, I do not support it being built in what I consider parklands. And parklands are very scarce. They're valuable resources in town. Town valuations and the quality of life are in part based upon the quantity and the quality of parklands and open space. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts has acknowledged this value by placing restrictions on how open space and parklands are developed. This protection is found under Article 97 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. While Article 97 does not prohibit parklands from being developed, it does require a purposefully onerous process through which the property can be removed from protected status and developed. That process has not occurred here. This process is purposefully cumbersome so that all the stakeholders, in this case the town residents, would understand what it means to remove that parkland for development purposes, because once it's developed, it isn't coming back. So regarding the proposed Bliss Park development, senior center, rec center, whatever it is that's being proposed, the process is not being followed. One of the things that seems to be people are stuck on is this Article 97 designation. I believe it is an Article 97 designation. The town refuses to accept this, and it's because of the deed, the missing deed. Well, I'm going to describe or go a little bit in the history of Bliss Park and show why a deed may not be there.
You have
You're
about 30 seconds.
30 seconds, okay.
Short history.
A short history. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts allowed Longmeadow in 1899 to create a watershed, a water property. In 1906, the state said, go ahead, you can start taking by eminent domain property to cobble together to create that watershed, which is now Laurel and Bliss Park. In 1934, because we were no longer getting water from that reservoir, we were buying it from Springfield, the town asked the Massachusetts state legislature permission to transfer that water property to parkland. The state legislature voted on that in February of 1934 and said, yep, you have permission to do that. Town meeting in 34 then approved it, and the land was then transferred from the water department to the park department. The reason no deed is found is because the state legislature voted on that. In processes such as that, it is not always common to find a deed filed. So the deed issue is basically not really valid. This land is Article 97, and as such, there are additional development restrictions that need to be followed. Spending $200,000
Thank you, Mr.
now
Carnahan.
is not a prudent measure. Thank you.
Please, no clapping. We shall turn to the person at the yellow microphone. Name and address, please.
Hi there. My name is Betsy Port. I live at 212 Farmington. I have more than one question. Can I ask more than one question?
All at one time, please.
Okay. It's a three-part question.
Okay.
First, I'd like to say a little bit about my background. I've lived here 20 years.
You can ask a question. 3 questions.
Thank you. The first question is, will someone please explain to me if Bliss Park, that has been used as a park for 82 years, why it is not a park? And if it is not a park, why do we have a park board, and what does their vote mean if they think they can just throw this land away and do anything they want with it? Number 2, the process over the summer of deciding on this site, it really wasn't done properly. The Conservation Commission was never involved.
What's your question?
Why wasn't the Conservation Commission involved in this decision process? There are wetlands, definitely, on this property. And number 3, if we are making a decision tonight to go ahead and spend $200,000, what does that mean? Are we wasting the money, or are we getting something for that money?
Thank you for your questions. Is there someone in the front who can answer it? Mr. Crane? And perhaps Ms. Bergeron? She was task force chair. You want to try? Mr. Crane.
Hopefully I did better than the last question. So in short, the land is not under the care, custody, and control of the Conservation Commission like the Meadows is. So when you want to do something on conservation land, you need Conservation Commission's buy-in. This is not the case. There may be wetlands in the park, but that would only come up as a permitting review process. So if we brought a project forward, which would come way, way, way at the end of the process we've been on, and the $200,000 doesn't even get you there, really, you would then bring a proposal for permitting to the Concom. Otherwise, they don't have jurisdiction over the parcel. I'm not going to speak for the park board, other than to say that their vote, based on my reading of it, is a policy statement, not a statement of land use. And I, again, forget the third one. And what does the $200,000 mean? For the purposes of this, in the context of this article, we say construct, in that we are using the fund, we would be using the funds to continue pre-development activities, design, traffic study, things like that. It does not mean that the town is bound to A, construct a senior center, and B, construct it at Bliss Park. It just furthers the analysis.
Is there anyone else who can answer the other questions? There may not. Ms. Bergeron, yes.
Yeah, the only thing I might add to this is that our team did meet with Al Lasco with the Conservation Commission as part of the process of looking at all of the sites that we investigated. And Al Lasco, there is a wetland area on the site. It is contained primarily on the Laurel site with the pond there. There is a stream that is fed by the storm drains from Farmington and from Oakwood. And that is only wet when there is water, and during the rain, there's heavy rains that shoot into a stream that was originally the watershed from that area, but because we built roads and et cetera, and put in storm drains, that now that water from the streets goes into that particular location.
Thank you.
I would expect that we would have a 100-foot buffer based on what Al Lesko said from that particular location.
Okay, the person at the green microphone.
Good evening, Madam Moderator. My name is Tim McKenna. I'm a resident at 197 Farmington Road. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Tim McKenna, 197 Farmington Road. Let's see, last time I spoke here in Long Meadow High School with a crowd this big, I was running for class president at 76. I think some of my classmates are here. They can tell you how that turned out. So, but I am, since then, I've gone on, and I'm a registered architect in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, have been for 35 years. I'm also a LEED accredited professional. That means leadership in energy and environmental protection practices. I've developed buildings all across the United States with LEED principles and sound, sustainable practices. And so that's the experience that I was asked to bring to this committee as an architect. So one of the first things that I did do, I was asked by the committee to take a look at Pioneer Valley Planning Commission's study and also Dietz's. The one question that I had was really, it's like all of my neighbors are asking, why can't we use Greenwood Park? So what was Dietz's study did look into the structure of the building and said that it was just built for one story. If we had to go back, I mean, frankly, in my professional opinion, we'd have to tear down the whole building, incurring an additional cost, and also we'd have to do all the abatement for hazardous materials that were used back then, asbestos, PVCs, things like that, adding about $1 million. So we were trying to exercise some fiduciary responsibility and care of cost.
You have about 30 seconds.
Yeah, okay. We are asking for this money for site research and traffic studies, legal. Everybody, all of my friends here, my neighbors, and people who have spoken before me have gone to legal, discussed legal matters. I'm not a lawyer, and I haven't watched a Law and Order marathon for quite some time, so I'm not prepared to talk about that. The one thing that I did want to speak on was the diagram that we had there.
Sir, your time is about up.
Okay. The diagram was a little bit misleading. It is smaller, but I want to save Bliss Park. I urge you to energize Bliss Park. Give us the opportunity to really make the park what we really feel it can be, a vibrant, dynamic contribution, not a neglected piece of property. Thank you.
Thank you. Somebody at the red microphone.
Marcia Harbison, 217 Farmington Road. We are all residents of Long Meadow who either grew up here or moved here. Reflect for a minute. If you moved here, why? Was it because of the great schools, the beautiful neighborhoods with sidewalks and trees, because of our beautiful parks? The warrant number 7 is not only a threat to all of these advantages of this peaceful, beautiful town, but also has cost thousands of dollars, endless meetings, and turned people against each other over a proposal that defies common sense, ignores legal advice, and
excuse me,
previous
Ms.
studies.
Harbison, please speak to the issue.
Okay, my issue is traffic. Traffic on Bliss Road is a serious issue. To quote from the minutes of the July 6th Senior Center Task Force Committee meeting, quote, "Traffic is challenging to old folks. Senior driving and proximity to Bliss Park are issues," unquote. Traffic on Bliss Road is already extremely heavy because of the shops, commuters, and the 3 schools, which are all accessed from Bliss Road: Blueberry Hill Elementary, Williams Middle School, and the Long Meadow High School. The 3 schools have 1,864 students, 65% of the school population. LHS has 969 students, many of whom are new drivers. The most recent Mass DOT report states that the average daily traffic on Bliss was 6,190 vehicles, and Laurel was 6,223 vehicles. Heavy traffic occurs year-round because of the Park and Rec day camps at Bliss. 142 campers used it last summer, and many people use the tennis courts, the swimming pool, the baseball fields, and the basketball court, and the hiking trails. We are lucky to have a wonderful police department they have given us a map, which I have, with exact numbers of accidents on different intersections. A recent 2-year report shows there were 19 accidents on the corner of Bliss and Laurel.
Please wrap it up.
Okay. Since we moved to town in 1977, I know of 2 precious little boys who were killed trying to get to Bliss Park. Our nobody wants to see more accidents or deaths in the area around Bliss Park. Our children's and grandchildren's safety is at risk. We don't need to spend $200,000 on more studies of this area and a traffic study to know that this is an extremely busy park and busy street. I urge you to vote no on Article 7.
Thank you, Ms. Sommer.
Cynthia Summer, 57 Farmington Avenue. And I have a question for the town attorney, please.
Mr. Schneider.
I have a question for the town attorney. Thank you. Right now, Bliss Park is a park with a number of recreational facilities on it, you know, the pool, the tennis courts, the ball fields, etc. And if a senior center is built, it's still going to be a park with one more recreational facility on it. So please explain to me, the use is not going to change. It's a park now, the senior center would get built, and it would still be a park. I don't understand what you were saying before about why it needs this 2/3 vote to put a recreational facility into a park. We have recreational facilities and parks all over America, so.
Frankly, the adult center as contemplated, even though it would have some recreational activities, would have some non-recreational activities, and it's going to be a change in use if you move towards social service.
Okay.
Thank you. At the green microphone.
Hi, I'm Margaret Rockus, 67 Shadyside Drive. I am the vice chair of the park board, and I would like to thank you for the opportunity to explain why the park board voted unanimously to support the siting of the Longmeadow Adult and Senior Center in Bliss Park. I'm not the expert, but I've read all 69 pages of the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission report. I've walked Bliss Park, I've visited the senior center, and I have read more town and committee reports than anybody wants to hear about. The first issue that some of my friends have brought up is this expansion renovation really necessary? Can't they just make do like real New Englanders? And besides, who really goes there except for the cheap lunch? According to the 2010 census cited in the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission report, Longmeadow has over 300 residents who are over 65 and are living at or near the income level deemed poverty. Also, this report expected 4,800 seniors by 2030. We now have approximately 4,400. We are on track to exceed projections in the next few years, not in 15. The current rooms and offices are fully utilized. Worse, sometimes there's no parking at the center, and those with difficulty walking or in poor weather cannot walk from the pool parking lot. Not everyone who attends the center depends on it for a meal supplement and a money saver, but we have plenty of seniors who do, and they are among our most vulnerable residents. So the park board agreed this was a problem that needed a real solution. Once we understood the expansion needs and how the members and staff of the senior center had already been making do, there's the question of location. Between this current committee and the previous, 10 locations were thoroughly vetted. Unfortunately, as much as magical thinking might encourage us to hope that there is a vacant parcel somewhere that doesn't have any impact on neighbors or traffic or playing fields or costs, that doesn't move this project forward. The 3-acre parcel, 7% of the total acreage at Bliss, fits the specifications, which include minimal disruption of ongoing activities at all parks. Finally, there's the issue of how the new building would impact Bliss Park and the town. The stand of trees nearest the road, some of which are tall and lovely and are driven over regularly, would have to be taken down. The playground, the pool, and the ball fields, the tennis and basketball courts, and the walking trails would remain as they are. In 50 years, most of those trees will be gone. Many of us will be residing elsewhere. But if the center is built, it will be standing and will be a shared resource for the entire community, for young and adult athletes, for organizations needing a place to meet, as well as for our seniors. These
Thank
shared
you.
memories and shared interactions at a common facility will continue to knit the fabric of our community together.
Thank you. Someone at the red microphone.
Yes.
Ms.
Fran-
Kress.
Sorry, I'm way short. So, Fran Kress, 273 Converse Street. I'm speaking on behalf of Long Meadow Citizens to Save Our Parks. Plans for development of the new senior center should be an event for
Speak
community.
right into the microphone.
Should be an event for community celebration. Instead, this important decision has become divisive because the process has not been fair. The legality of development on this land was not researched in advance. Therefore, the critical information necessary for all of us to make an informed decision tonight was not available. The burden of discovery should not have been placed on town residents. We now know that Bliss Park has legal protection from development under law, under common law doctrine, in sections of the Mass General Laws, and arguably under Article 97 of the Mass Constitution. 8 days ago, the Select Board ignored the concurring opinion of
Ms.
Town
Kress,
Council
you c-
that the
Ms. Kress,
town does not.
Ms. Kress.
Yes?
We can't say they ignored it. That's
Okay.
speculating on their action.
They listened and did not follow it. In any event, the town council, that the town does not have a clear legal right to develop this land as proposed. In light of this, an expenditure of $200,000 is fiscally irresponsible. The future existence of an 82-year-old park in the very heart of our community is endangered, a park that was designated in 2010 as a critical natural landscape on Biomap 2, which is a Massachusetts initiative to provide protection and stewardship to areas considered critical to biodiversity. This designation was approved and is on file with the State Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, the agency charged with protecting open space under Article 97 of the Massachusetts Constitution. Bliss Park was a gift from the citizens of Long Meadow in 1934. Seniors, you deserve a new facility. We support your need, and we will work with you to build it. However, this site is not the best site. A yes vote on this article hurts all of us. A better solution exists. Let's join forces to achieve mutually inclusive goals. $200,000 would be a nice initial investment in something that was a sure thing. Please vote no on Article 7.
Thank you. We shall now turn to the person at the yellow microphone.
My name is Steve Wallman. I live on Pinewood Drive, and I have a hypothetical question for Town and Council. Since the Park and Rec Commission voted 5-0 in favor of this project, if this project were taken over by the Park and Rec Commission, and therefore there would be no question about Article 97 or going before the state legislature, could they go ahead and say, we're going to build a recreation center for the entire town, old and young alike, with the exact plan that is currently shown on the plan earlier this evening?
I don't believe so because it would still be a change of use.
I can't hear you.
I do not believe so because it would still constitute a change in use requiring legislative approval.
We shall now turn to the person at the green microphone, Mr. Wojcik.
I'm Roger Wojcik, 57 Parkside Street. Our senior center, which shares, as you know, a 50-year-old Greenwood grade school building with the Parks Department,
Right in the microphone.
is badly overcrowded and needs expanded space to do its work. If you were there yesterday for early voting in our national election, you noticed that the voting tables and the voting staff were set up in the hallway of the center. If you were there yesterday to discard your business papers safely in the shred container, a service that's offered to you at no cost, you would have to walk around the line of early voters, around the voting setup, and down the hallway to where the shred container is located. If you visited the senior center yesterday and signed in at the self-service desk, you noticed that it was located in the hallway. If you were in the senior center yesterday to pick up literature of interest to you regards upcoming events in the area or local news, no problem. That information's in the hallway. We do have other space in the building, but it is all occupied. If you drove to the senior center yesterday and found a parking space, you are lucky, as some folks have taken to parking on the lawn, which I think is park property, parking on the lawn as all the parking spaces are taken or were taken. If you're planning on going to the senior center tomorrow for a flu shot and are looking to park, good luck, as you're competing for parking space with many, many others that are coming for a flu shot or coming for early voting or coming to take advantage of the over 50 activities in your senior center available throughout the week, most of which are offered to you at no cost. Longmeadow's senior population is growing rapidly and needs the advantage of social and health programs offered by the senior center. To do this, we're requesting a couple of $100,000 to continue the work of defining the facility. Location's been set, which in turn will work for you in the future. Parking clearly is one issue. It's been addressed by many in the debate this evening. Parking simply is not available. You expand in Greenwood Park, you're going to have to put in a parking garage. It could get that bad. So I urge you to vote the money to continue the process of developing a new facility for the Briss location. Thank you.
Thank you. Someone at the red microphone.
Greenwood was identified by
Name and address, please.
My name is Maura Murphy. I'm
Thank
at
you.
19 Tecumseh Drive. Greenwood was identified by the Pioneer Valley Planning Study as the #1 choice.
Louder.
Greenwood was identified by the Pioneer Valley Planning Study as the #1 choice for a senior center in 2014. I have a copy of it here. If anyone would like it, we'd be happy to provide it. It gave a very detailed summary. It interviewed seniors. A lot of money was spent by an independent group that gave very thorough, detailed analysis, and that was their conclusion. The Finance Committee does not support this project, given the current tax rate and other capital needs of the town. Earlier, Mary Beth Bergeron presented her statement that the Springfield is building a new senior center. It's not a comparable town. They did not use Springfield as a comparison. We do not have FEMA money. Our current site was not destroyed by a tornado. We have very limited parkland. We don't have a lot of parkland, and we do not have a lot of open space that is not wetland protected. Please, vote no and save our park.
Thank you. Now somebody at the yellow microphone.
Lewis Robin, 942 Long Meadow Street. I move the question, please.
Please, no clapping. Is there a second? The motion has been made and seconded. This is not debatable. It requires a 2/3 majority vote to end debate and come right to a vote on Article 7. Would all those in favor of ending discussion or on this motion raise your blue cards? Thank you. All those opposed to the motion, please raise your blue cards. The motion is approved by 2/3 declaration. We shall now come directly to a vote on Article 7. So I ask that you be seated, please. We're going to be voting directly on Article 7. If anybody is in the back who's standing, would like to vote, I direct you to sit down in order to vote. And once everyone is seated, we shall come directly to a vote. This vote requires a simple majority. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. All those opposed to the motion, please raise your blue cards. The motion fails. Please, no clapping. Majority negative vote. We shall now come to Article 8. Mr. Lacusa.
Okay. Article number 8.
Folks, please, if you are leaving, I ask that you remain quiet while you exit the room. There is other business that needs to occur.
Okay,
Mr.
article-
Lacusa.
Yes, Article number 8. I move that the town vote to transfer from available funds.
Excuse me, Mr. Lacusa. If you are leaving, you must be quiet while you leave. Ready?
I move that the town vote to transfer from available funds in the Treasury the sum of $6,426 from water retained earnings, the sum of $3,200, and from the sewer retained earnings, the sum of $3,213 for the purchase of a global positioning system, GPS, for the town's Department of Public Works vehicles.
Is there a second? There's a Mr. Lacusa? Mr. Lacusa, I don't think everyone could hear you. Could you please make the motion a little bit louder?
Okay, so I will reread this. I move that the town vote to transfer from available funds in the Treasury the sum of $6,426 from water retained earnings, the sum of $3,213 from the sewer retained earnings, and the sum of $3,213 for the purchase of a global positioning system, GPS, for the town's Department of Public Works vehicles.
The motion has been made and seconded. You may speak to it, Mr. Lacusa.
As negotiated in the most recent Long Meadow Association of Municipal Workers, DPW collective bargaining agreement, the sum of $12,852 is needed for the remainder of fiscal year 2017, November 2016 through June 2017, to pay the monthly service fees related to the installation of a global positioning system units in DPW vehicles.
Is there a Finance Committee recommendation?
Finance Committee recommends Article 8.
Thank you. The floor is open for discussion. Yes, sir.
Matthew Miranda, 41 Woolworth Street. I'm just really curious, because Long Meadow's not a big place. Why do we need a global positioning sensor on our DPW trucks?
Thank you. Mr. Crane?
So in addition to being able to locate vehicles, and you're right, it's 9 square miles, it gives the Department of Public Works a lot of great information for managing their fleet. Not only where are they, but vehicle performance, vehicle maintenance issues, idling times, quick acceleration, quick braking. It really is an efficiency tool for the management of the department, and it also helps keep track of where things are. I mean, my kind of grand view is hopefully someday we can get to a point where, like during a snowstorm, people will be able to see in real time where the trucks are. I don't know if we're there yet, but that's kind of a long-term idea.
Any other discussion? Then we shall come directly to a vote on Article 8. This vote requires a simple majority. All those in favor, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your blue cards. The majority has it. The motion is approved by majority affirmative vote. Article 9, Mr. Lowe.
I move that the town vote to transfer from available funds in the Treasury. Oh, sorry. I move that the town vote to transfer from the ambulance fund the sum of $50,000 for the purchase of 1 cardiac monitor and 1 auto pulse to be used in the equipping of the town's ambulances.
Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded. You may speak to it.
One of the town's 2 cardiac monitors is 9 years old and at the end of its 10-year replacement cycle. To keep it in service would require a minimum investment of $4,000 for software upgrades. The town currently has 1 AutoPulse device used as a positive intervention to lower mortality rates when applied to a cardiac arrest patient. The upgrade in the ambulance equipment will allow for enhanced communications between the ambulance personnel and the doctors at the hospital, who then can determine the level of intervention required upon arrival.
Finance Committee recommendation?
The Finance Committee recommends Article 9.
Thank you. Any other further discussion? Seeing none, we shall come directly to a vote on the motion under Article 9. This requires a simple majority. All those in favor, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. The motion is approved by majority affirmative vote. We shall now come to Article 10.
I move that the town vote to transfer from the sewer retained earnings account the sum of $160,000 for the purpose of funding a sewer infiltration inflow analysis.
Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded. You may speak to it, Mr. Lowe.
Under 314 CMR 12-00, Mass DEP is required that a sewer infiltration inflow analysis be completed by December 31st, 2017 for review and approval. Flow meters need to be installed in early spring of 2017 for a 10-week period to measure wastewater flow.
Thank you. Finance Committee recommendation, please.
The Finance Committee recommends Article 10.
Thank you. Any further discussion? We shall come directly to a vote under Article 10. This requires a simple majority. All those in favor, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. All those opposed, raise your blue cards. Thank you. The motion is approved by majority affirmative vote. We shall now come to Article 11. Mr. Lowe.
I move that the town vote to authorize the treasurer to borrow the sum of $530,000 for the purposes of purchasing a new fire apparatus and related issuance costs.
Is there a second? Second. Motion's been made and seconded. You may speak to it, Mr. Lowe.
The town's 1992 fire engine number 2 is currently at the latter part of its useful life and in need of extensive repairs. It was scheduled to be retired in fiscal year 2018. Instead of investing in tens of thousands of dollars in repairs with no guarantee of an extension on its useful life, the authorization for a replacement is being sought now with an understanding that it may take over a year for a replacement to actually be in service with the town. The town has accumulated $140,000 over the last 2 years towards a fire truck replacement. The amount requested is the difference in what is currently accumulated in the cost of a new fire engine plus the issuance costs of a bond.
Finance Committee recommendation? Mr. Garrett?
Yes, the Finance Committee had a chance to hear from Chief Dearborn with respect to the emergent and urgent need for the replacement of the fire truck. After hearing at length on all the details concerning the urgent need for this, the Finance Committee recommends Article 11.
Thank you. Floor is open for discussion. Ms. Neff?
Kim King, 15 Pinewood Drive. I have a question. Are we able to take the $200,000 from Article 7 in free cash and allocate that to Article 11, so we're only borrowing $330,000?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, but in terms of procedurally, let me just.
How would I think that ask for that?
That's not what it. That's a. I think that would probably be a budgetary planning issue and beyond the scope of the article.
Okay.
But for future planning's purposes, could that be addressed? Not for this town meeting.
So we can't vote on that, or to raise the amount, or?
What's that? It's outside of the scope of the article, but in terms of future planning, is that?
Could I?
Okay, so
no,
could you?
I wouldn't amend the amount
Thank
to
you.
330 so that we could.
So, because the article is explicit on borrowing, allocating free cash, which usually is worded any sums in the treasury, would be outside the scope. However, I don't think for this warrant, but certainly in the springtime, if we still have the free cash, you could make you could bring an article forward, or the select board could bring an article forward to transfer free cash to pay down the debt on the truck, which will not, I don't think, have been incurred at that time. So that there is a way to do that, but I think for the purposes of the warrant tonight, I think it's not here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crane. Sir, at the green mic?
Steve Chandler, 60 Duxbury Lane. I would like to speak in favor of this motion. I think it's important that I spoke up here in the past about when we were up here to purchase a ladder truck. I think it is important that the fire department have the appropriate tools that they need to do their job. I would ask if there's somebody available who could explain some of the things that that a rescue pumper or a rescue truck could do that the ladder truck is not capable of doing. I know that there are some things that it's going to do differently, and I think it would be helpful if someone could speak to the differences.
Chief Dearborn?
John Dearborn, your fire chief. Yeah, so this truck is primarily a rescue truck. It's a combination vehicle. So it's all the equipment to do firefighting if there's a structure fire. It has a pump and water and ladders and things like that. But this truck also carries your jaws of life and all the rescue equipment. So all the car accidents we go to, anybody entangled, trapped anywhere. So we can't take two different types of fire apparatus and we squish them together into one. It's a much more efficient way to run with our limited staffing. So like we did with the ladder, with that Quint concept, we took two different types of apparatus and made it into one. So it's just a really efficient way to run fire apparatus and keep a smaller fleet for you. So it's more less expensive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At the yellow microphone? Yes, sir?
Yes, hi, David Gustafson, Ardsley Road. Actually, my question was similar to the gentleman that just spoke, so perhaps the chief can help me better understand. Engine 2, then, as I understand your comments, provides a more efficient platform than the Quint truck?
And are those all your questions? You can ask all your questions?
Well, no, actually, I have a subsequent follow-up relative to the chief's comment.
That'll count as second comment. Yep. Your second question.
So they don't do the same jobs. The Quint truck is primarily for structure firefighting, has a ladder on it, so that has its own set of jobs. This truck has another set of jobs. So you can't put them all together in one truck.
Okay, Mr. Gustafson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Moderator. Once again to the chief. Were the differentiation between the two engines, was that brought out within the context of the Quint truck discussion?
Chief Dearborn.
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question.
As you just outlined, it's my understanding that these two trucks, the Quint and the one that you're currently looking for, they indeed have different functions. Is that a fair point? Or more efficient function one versus the other?
They have very different functions.
Okay.
However, they complement each other.
Okay.
Thank you. That answers your question, right? There's another person in line.
Partial.
There's another person in line. Once you've had two follow-ups, we'll allow the other person a chance to speak, and then you can get back in line and ask your other question.
Okay. Well, as they say in the court of law, I take exception to that comment, and we'll come back and revisit it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. Robin Fine-Crevlin, 144 Hawthorne Street. I have a question related to our first speaker, Ms. King. The article specifically says that we, as a town meeting, can approve a greater or lesser sum to be borrowed. Is that correct?
The article does, but the motion was not made. The motion was made for $530,000. So that's what we're discussing.
Then I would ask that if the movement would recognize perhaps an amendment to the motion for $330,000 to be borrowed instead of $530,000.
That was pretty much that's
I'm
what we already
moving to amend.
discussed. Ms. King's question was around basically the same idea, seeking if we could amend this, and that is beyond the scope of this particular article.
Although it's not beyond the scope of the article itself as posted in the warrant?
It is beyond the scope of the motion under this article.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Then we shall come directly to a vote on Article 11. This requires a 2/3 majority. All those in favor, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. The motion is approved by 2/3 declaration affirmative vote. We shall now come to Article 6. No, actually, that was tabled. We need to move to take it off the table. So that
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'd like to move to bring Article 6 back on the table.
That requires a second. It's not debatable. This requires a simple majority to take from the table. All those in favor of taking from the table Article 6, raise your blue cards. Thank you. All opposed, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. The motion carries, is approved by affirmative vote. Majority affirmative vote. We shall now turn to discussion of Article 6. Mr. Lacusa. Yep.
Okay, Article 6 still reads that I move that the town vote to transfer from available funds in the Treasury the sum of $277,100 to the following accounts. Capital account for fire truck replacement, $27,000. Capital stabilization fund, $127,500. Fiscal year 2017 operating budget account, OPEB liability, $122,600,000.
Is there a second? Second. Motion's been made and seconded. You may speak to it, Mr. Lacusa.
As part of the fiscal year 2017 budget process, the Select Board had to decrease certain capital and operation budget appropriations in order to produce a balanced budget at the May 2016 annual town meeting. $27,000 was cut from the town's annual appropriation for a fire truck replacement. $127,500 was cut from the town's fiscal year 2017 capital appropriation goal set by the Select Board policies. And $122,600 was cut from the town's annual appropriation. Oh, wait a second. Yes, and $122,600,000 was cut from the town's annual appropriation goal set by the Select Board policy to address the town's other post-employment benefits, OPEB, liability. An additional $48,000 was cut from the Department of Public Works Grounds Division, but is being funded in fiscal year 2017 with accumulated student parking fees.
Thank you. Finance Committee recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. At this time, we'd like to offer an amendment.
An amendment must be in writing.
I believe the moderator has our amendment in writing.
Where is it? Thank you. All right, you may make your motion.
We move to amend Article 6 as follows. The sum of $227,000 to be amended to $387,100, with $130,000 of those funds allocated to the capital account for fire truck replacement to be used for the exclusive purpose of reducing and offsetting the amount the treasurer may borrow for purchasing a new fire apparatus and related issuance costs as described in Article 11.
And please read so the capital account, please read the numbers.
For the capital account for fire truck replacement, $137,000. The capital stabilization fund remains at $127,500. And the fiscal year 2017 operating budget account, OPEB liability, remains $122,600. Madam Moderator, may I speak
It
further?
has been seconded. Motion to amend has been made and seconded. You may speak to it, Mr. Garrett.
when the Finance Committee considered Article 11, after hearing from the chief, the determination was made that, this actually has already been spoken to by some of the people who've spoken up at the microphones, that rather than borrow the sum that was listed in Article 11, that we could transfer additional available funds to pay that down so that we would not be making as large of an amount. We'd not be borrowing as large an amount. The amount that we decided on was $130,000, which would reduce the $530,000 to being borrowed $400,000, which comes out to be about a 25% reduction in the amount that we'd actually be borrowing. And so the Finance Committee felt that that was a reasonable accommodation to be made to pay as we go, as the expression goes, and to use some of the funds we had available rather than borrowing money where we actually have the money available to spend.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. Is there a select board recommendation on this? Okay. I understand the select board has not had a chance to vote on this, so I'm asking for a select board member position.
This is my personal opinion. This has nothing to do with the select board. The select board has not voted on it. I'm Mark Golden, live on Avondale Road. I just need some clarification because the numbers as I heard them, and I'm not sure they make sense, because when the Article 11 was developed for $530,000 for the fire truck, it was predicated on the town also putting $27,000 in Article 6. And for those of you who aren't in on town lingo, it's actually from free cash. It's money available. That's available funds in the Treasury. And so if they want to reduce the amount we borrow from 530 down to 400, they've got to go from 27,000 to 157,000, I believe, to make that happen. Mr. Pasturzik might better correct me, but and that wasn't their motion. And in addition, the question I have, I guess, for town council is, we've already voted on Article 11 to borrow $530,000. You know, can we therefore then go back and only borrow $400,000, which I like to, and this speaks to Mrs. King's comment earlier about can we borrow less money because we have available funds.
You've been authorized to borrow $530,000. You've been authorized to borrow $530,000. Correct.
Mr. Pasturzik, did you speak? Mr. Pasturzik, and then we'll get to the floor.
I guess the question is, with the $530,000.
Real close to the mic.
The question is, with the $530,000 that was authorized to borrow in Article 11, it would give the select board the authorization to borrow up to that amount. It would be their decision if there is this excess money that the Finance Committee is putting into the fire truck fund, if they wanted to apply that or not. But they would have the right to make that decision because they do have an authorization to borrow up to $530,000. So if they use the $530,000, this other money would still be set aside and brought forward for the purchase of a future fire truck. Or if they decide to utilize all the money that's being put aside into the reserve for the fire truck, it would reduce to the amount that we have to borrow.
Yes, sir.
Alex Grant, 54 Westmoreland Avenue. And I have a question and a comment, so I'll stay here so I don't run afoul of any rules here. And I was on the select board this spring, so I'm familiar with the budget process that did require us to make some hard choices. And I guess my question is, if we put $127,500 into the capital stabilization fund, the way I read that is that we're basically putting the money into a bank account. The decisions that we were making in the spring was actually capital projects, sidewalk replacement, pavement, that sort of thing. So I'm a little puzzled by the idea that we would be taking free cash, which is in one bank account, and then putting it into a stabilization fund, which is basically another bank account. It's sort of switching money between your two pockets. So I'm not sure what's being accomplished by that. My comment relates to the OPEB liability, and this is something that we've debated over the last few years. The select board policy has been to increase the amount of money that we're putting in yet another bank account for future OPEB costs. And I'll just tell you, it's a little like trying to fill the ocean with a spoon. The potential liability is huge. OPEB is healthcare costs for people who aren't working for us anymore. State and national policies set healthcare costs. We have no control over that. All we can do is try to shovel money at the problem. And we're talking about an OPEB liability that extends over 30 years. I'm not sure that putting additional money accomplishes anything tangible. And as a result, I'll be voting against this motion.
Thank you.
Actually, we
Can you
need to
answer?
speak to the, I'm speaking to the amendment
Right.
to the motion.
Or is there somebody who can answer his question? Let's see if there's somebody who can answer the question first.
But his question was really not on the main amendment. It was on the motion. In other words, it wasn't on the amendment.
Then we'll wait. Yeah. Mr. Crane.
Just to address, I guess, the question, capital stabilization isn't really like a bank account. It is an account, but that is used to fund capital projects. So the funds that were seeking to be put in the capital stabilization fund could then be appropriated through a town meeting vote in the springtime on projects in this fiscal year. The amount of capital work we're doing in FY17 was directly reduced by that amount, and so it's to make sure we keep pace with our goals on capital spending. In terms of OPEB, I would just add that the Municipal Modernization Act, which is a signature law of the Baker-Polito administration that was just signed, does include new mechanisms for towns to contribute to OPEB, and I think it's a clear acknowledgement from the Commonwealth that OPEB is a serious issue that municipalities need to be addressing. Thank you.
Ms. Angelides.
I just want to go back to the amendment that the Finance Committee put on, and I know that they weren't changing the OPEB amount, but they were changing the capital account for fire truck replacement, and some of the numbers I think Mark Gold said he was concerned with. And I think the one thing is they were bringing it up to 137, and they were talking about bringing 110 down to eventually pay off that bond. The only concern I have about that is we very carefully put $27,000 in for subsequent fire trucks. So we wanted to be able to start funding that fire truck fund appropriately, and that's even low. And so if we do take that full amount and pay off, we wouldn't be able to at least put even $27,000. We don't want to be stuck in the position again of buying two fire trucks right close together. So we want to be fiscally responsible, put a little money in every month, every year for that fund, and that's why I hate to see that cut back. So the select board, I think we would be discussing keeping in that 27. So they were talking about taking that full amount and putting it towards the bond. We want to start fiscally planning for the next truck too. So that was the only correction I wanted to make on the amendment. And the select board had not been told about the amendment, so we couldn't discuss it. But I know that in our discussions, we emphasize the importance of putting money away every year. So I just want to make that correction. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Russell Duperret, Ashford Road. In Article 3, we voted to move $55,000.
I'm sorry. We're going to stick to Article 6.
Yes, but
Okay.
this question is related to that. So in Article 3, we moved $55,000 into stabilization to affect or help our Moody's rating. In this article, we're moving money out of free cash, and my understanding is free cash and stabilization both are looked at by Moody's, and OPEB and capital is not. So my question is for the Finance Committee, if we're moving, in one article we're moving money into an account that helps our Moody's rating, which affects our, our interest rate for bonds, and in this article we're moving a substantial amount out. And I'm curious what the Finance Committee's position is on that.
So are you speaking about the Finance Committee's amendment? then?
Well, it's really both, because
Well,
the original
We
is
have,
also
we have
this-
to vote on the amendment first.
Well, on the amendment then, which is even more money coming out of that
Okay.
account.
Finance Committee answer for that? Do you have an answer for the question?
I'm sorry I was involved in a conversation. Just to make sure I understand your question, you're saying that in a prior article, Article 3, that money was moved into the Operational Stabilization Fund?
Yes,
$50,000?
55.
And so your question now is why would we be, and the purpose of that was to improve bond ratings and things of that nature?
Yes.
And so then why would we be moving money out of that fund when we expressly said that we wanted to improve the bond ratings and stuff by putting money into the fund?
Yes.
And the answer to that question is that's the Operational Stabilization Fund. The money that we're talking about allocating wouldn't be going into the wouldn't be coming from the Operational Stabilization Fund. It would be coming from free cash. Does that answer your question?
No, because, well, free cash is also, free cash and stabilization are, so according to Article 3, those are the two areas that Moody's will look at as far as our bond rating, and they're saying we should be higher than where we are. So now we're taking money out of those accounts, free cash in this case, which I would assume that 6.48 or whatever percent we're at now, this is going to reduce that by some amount.
Mr. Garrett? No, I'm recognizing you.
So your question is, how would the amount of money in the free cash affect Moody's or our bond ratings as compared to the amount of money in our Operational Stabilization Fund? Is that your question for me?
Well, what we
And
did
this
is we
is
put in,
the third question. I'd like to keep things moving, please.
well, I don't think the question's been answered yet.
Well, this is your third time at speaking. Thank you.
So we put in
so
55
I have
grand, we're
two
taking out
responses to
several
that.
hundred thousand.
The first is number one, with respect to how Moody's evaluates the different accounts and what impact it has on their bond rating, I'm woefully out of my depth to answer that. But what I can say is I also know that our borrowing also affects our rating. So when we pay off more of the money that's supposed to be going towards the borrowing for the fire truck, that also has a positive impact on our rating.
Okay, which wouldn't
Thank you.
apply to the OPEB amount.
Next speaker, please.
Hello, Madam Moderator. David Gustafson, Ardsley Road. Point of order. It does not denote how many questions you can ask here. It says questions and motions. Having said that, I'd like to understand, one of the select persons stood up a minute ago and said that the $27,000 was an appropriate amount, and I underscore appropriate, to move into the capital account for fire truck replacement. Having said that, I really need to better understand then the relationship of $122,600 for the OPEB liability, given the scale of our liability. I don't understand the ratio or relationship between what an appropriate amount is for the fire truck replacement and how in the world $122,600 could in any way, shape, or form be appropriate for the OPEB.
Is
So
this
please
about-
help me understand the comment and the logic behind that, please.
One moment, is this about the amendment to raise that amount to 137 instead of 27?
It's all in the same context.
Well, we are voting on whether or not to raise it to 137 from the 27.
Correct, it's all in the same context. So, I repeat, can you help me understand that, please?
If you're asking about the amendment, we can proceed. Ms. Angelides, you can, if you have an answer for the amendment?
My comment was not about the amendment, and I think instead of appropriated, we wanted to appropriate $27,000 for that fund. when the select
Closer,
board's
closer.
looking at this in the future, they're talking about hundreds of thousands being put in that fund every year. So 27 is, I agree with you, a drop in the bucket, but it has nothing to do with the amendment other than how much we would be transferring down.
All right.
So that was two different
Are we,
things.
are we ready to come to a vote on the amendment?
I had a follow-up question, please.
This is your last question, sir.
Why is it all of a sudden my last question? I'm curious.
You have spoken on, ooh, one, two, oh, forgive me. You have two more chances to speak then. One more chance to speak after this one.
Okay.
It's by bylaw.
No, that's fine. Listen, I want to keep the discussions rolling as well. This gets back to a comment made by an earlier speaker on OPEB. The 122,600, I think it's admirable in a philosophical sense that we're looking to fund. But let's be real. That is a joke. We either do it or we don't. And since this implies to me that we're not really making an attempt at funding this, I say forget it and put the money towards fire equipment, which is much more important. Thank you.
All right, so the amendment, I'm going to read the amendment once more so we know what we're voting on. I move that the town, so the amendment is to, I move that the town vote to transfer from available funds in the Treasury the sum of $387,100 to the following accounts, with $130,000 of the funds allocated to the capital account for the fire truck replacement to be used for the exclusive purpose of reducing and offsetting the amount the treasurer may borrow for purchasing a new fire apparatus and related insurance costs as described in Article 11. So the capital account for the fire truck replacement would be $137,000. Capital Stabilization Fund, $127,500. Fiscal year 2017 operating budget account OPEB liability, $122,600. A motion to amend requires a simple majority. The ultimate article that once amended or not amended does require a 2/3 majority. So we are now voting on the Finance Committee's amendment to the article. All those in favor, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your blue cards. The motion to amend carries by majority affirmative vote. Any further discussion on the article as amended? Seeing none, we shall come directly to a vote on Article 6 as amended. This requires a 2/3 majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. The majority vote, 2/3 majority declaration vote. Motion is carried. We shall now come to Article 12. Mr. Gold.
Madam Moderator, I move that the town vote to reduce the amount appropriated and authorized to borrow for the Long Meadow High School project voted in Article 1 of the May 25th, 2010 special town meeting from $77,969,388 by $31,413,388.
Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded. You may speak to it, Mr. Gold.
Yes, the town issued $44.1 million in long-term debt, $200,000 in bond anticipation notes, which became due in fiscal year 2017 and fiscal year 2018 equally, and another bond anticipation note for $2,256,000, which had been fully paid off with
Mr. Gold, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I've been informed that the motion was said differently. I want to make sure that you have the right number that you're reading. So the motion was, I move that the town vote to reduce the amount appropriated and to authorize to borrow for the Long Meadow High School project voted in Article 1 of the May 25th, 2010 special town meeting from $77,969,388 by, and read the number again, please.
$31,413,388.
Thank you. Thank you, I appreciate that.
I apologize. That's what I
It's
thought
all
I'd
right.
say.
It's been seconded, I believe.
Okay.
Continue speaking to it.
Essentially, this article eliminates the remaining bond amount. When we went to vote for the town meeting to build the school, the state required that we authorize borrowing the entire amount of the building, $77 million. We actually only borrowed a little over $44 million, so we now have to, if you will, unappropriate the authority to borrow the difference, and that's what this is about.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll come to, Finance Committee recommendation.
The Finance Committee recommends Article 12.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, we'll come directly to a vote. This requires a simple majority. All those in favor, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. All opposed, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. The motion is approved by majority affirmative vote. We shall now come to Article 13.
Madam Moderator, I move the town vote to amend sections of Article 5, Chapter 900, Registration and Maintenance of Foreclosed Properties, the general bylaws of the town, as listed in the town warrant, and waive the reading thereof.
Is there a second? Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to move in terms of the article as written in Article 13. You may speak to it, Mr. Gold.
Yes, vacant, abandoned, or blighted properties present exceedingly similar problems to the town that foreclosed properties posed. These amendments allow for the present foreclosed property bylaw to also govern vacant, abandoned, and blighted properties.
Any discussion? Yes, sir.
Robert Henderson, Williston Drive. I'm opposed to this because the 7 days specified is too short. Many people are out of town for longer than 7 days, and their house could fall into a state of blight due to, let's say, fire. And if the property owner is away, and especially if they're far away and haven't had an opportunity to hear about it, I think 7 days is too short of a time. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, David Gustafson, Ardsley Road. I want to take a moment to urge the remaining residents to vote for Article 13. I would personally like to note, and on the record, a big thank you to the town manager, to the sergeant in the new position of safety manager for the town of Long Meadow, as well as the chief of police. I personally was involved in an incident that involved essentially what this is, and I did not write this this article, but I can tell you this: there are instances in town where out-of-town owners are not keeping up and maintaining their property, and as a result, safety issues occur, and as a result, children could be hurt, etc., motorists, etc. It takes a lot of paperwork and process in order to get those out-of-town owners to essentially get on the stick and take care of that particular safety issue. A lot of time goes by, people could get hurt. So in summary, please vote for Article 13. It's critical for everybody's safety. And again, I want to reach out to the town officials who helped in our particular situation. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll come directly to a vote. This vote requires a simple majority. All those in favor, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. The motion is approved by majority affirmative vote. We shall now come to Article 14. Mr. Gold.
Madam Moderator, I move that the town vote to amend Article 3, Chapter 500, Section 3-508, Appointments, commencement of terms of the general bylaws of the town by deleting it in its entirety and amending it as listed in the town warrant, and we waive the reading thereof.
Is there a second? Thank you. The motion's been made and seconded. You may speak to it.
The Select Board has requested additional time in which to review proposed appointees to town boards and commissions. The current bylaws require the action within a fixed period of time, and often we can't get that done in that period of time due to scheduling. and therefore letting this duration expand a little bit will help us so we don't have to re-interview people who just came before the board.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none? Oh, okay. We'll come directly to a vote. This requires a simple majority. All those in favor, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. This motion is approved by unanimous affirmative vote. Yep. Article 15, Mr. Foster.
Madam Moderator, I move that the town vote to amend Article 2, Chapter 600, Section 2-601M, Water and Sewage Non-Payment of the General Bylaws of the town by deleting in its entirety and amending as follows. Madam Chair, Madam Moderator, I move to in terms of the article.
Motion's been made in terms of the article. Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded. You may speak to it, Mr. Foster.
This amendment is meant to recover expenses incurred in administrating and processing demand fees.
Yes, sir.
Kurt Friedman, 24 Ridge Road. I'm opposed to this article. I also have a couple questions first.
So do you want to speak about your opposition and then ask your questions?
I need to ask some questions first. Then I can then continue
well,
with my...
Let's then go to the yellow microphone, and then we'll recognize the gentleman at the red microphone for his opposition and go back to you. So ask the questions first.
Does the proposed amendment read, if a bill for water services remains unpaid for 30 days after the bill is issued, does it say bill is issued?
That's what the article says.
And then the next question is, does the existing bylaw read, if a bill for water services remains unpaid for 30 days after the bill is due? Am I reading these accurately?
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Crane.
That's correct. Right now it says after the bill is due. Most municipalities have it so it's after the bill is issued, because obviously timing it so after the bill is due, it creates an excessive amount of time when the town has not received payment pursuant to the bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
After a bill is issued, when is it mailed?
I think.
How much time goes by?
Yeah, it gets. I mean, we send a data dump to a printing contractor, and then they print them all out and send them all out. So that's how they get issued.
But how much time goes by?
Is your last
days.
question?
Okay, thank you.
All right. Mr.
Now can I go to the
Yep,
opposition?
now you wait. Thanks.
The reason why
I'm sorry.
I'm opposed to this amendment is that
Sir, since there was somebody else ahead of you, you've spoken twice in asking two questions. I'd like to get other people a chance to speak first. You want to defer? Okay. Mr. Friedman, go ahead.
I'm opposed to this amendment for the following reasons. Presently, a period of 75 days would go by and a person would be effectively fined $30. With the proposed, 45 days would go by and a person would be fined $40, an increase of $10, which I am not opposed to. An increase of $10 seems to be reasonable. The issue is turning someone's water off at their home is punitive. I don't believe that the punishment fits the crime. I feel it is unreasonable. If you turn off somebody's water, you are denying them sanitation, you are denying them fire protection if they have fire protection in their home. They lose their drinking water. A person has to move out of their home. So if you're late on paying your bill, you may have a dispute, you may not have time to resolve that billing dispute. You are forced out of your home. I think this is just un-American. I believe that our community would be better served, and I believe that the cash flow of the Water Commission, which I support, would be dramatically improved if we change from a 6-month billing period to a quarterly billing period. We could also perhaps offer a discount for people that pay their bills well within time. I think if we offer a carrot instead of a stick, we will better serve our community. I would ask the water commissioners to rethink this and come back with improved policies which better serve this community. Please vote no on this amendment. Thank you.
Madam Moderator,
Um,
can I just a comment?
Quick comment, and then we're going to have the person at the yellow microphone.
Just quickly, the select board has a policy of not doing, as the Water and Sewer Commission / select board, their policy is to place the arrearage onto the, as a lien on the taxes, not to do shut-offs. I don't, according to the finance director, no one's ever been shut off. So I appreciate the gentleman's comments. The bylaw does say that, but if you look at the history in the policy of the board, they have a policy of putting it on the tax bill, not doing shut-off. Thanks.
At the yellow microphone, yes, ma'am.
Mary Monahan, Frank Smith Road. Moderator, I'm not sure who I direct this question to, but it's
Ask
just
it
a
to me.
question. Maybe
Ask it to me, and I'll direct it to somebody else.
What if there's a real case of hardship? Say someone goes into, they live alone, they break their hip, they go into rehab, their water bill comes, it doesn't get paid. The town wouldn't shut their water off. They wouldn't put a lien on their house, would they?
Well, as noted, that there's two things. One, there is, like I said, the mechanism is a lien to the tax bill in lieu of a shut-off, and there is an abatement process for water bills. So if there is a hardship, there is consideration for an abatement.
So basically, if a family member notified the town,
You have to apply for it, yeah.
you just, okay, so there's an application.
Yes.
process. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Robert Henderson, Williston Drive. I oppose this motion both on grounds of principle and of due process. On grounds of principle, a safe, adequate supply of water is a human right. Shutting off water due to non-payment is a threat to human health and an insult to human dignity, especially that of children and elders. And to the point of the town manager, just because the select board currently and historically has not shut off water, it can't predict at all what future elected officials would do, and human rights go above the whims of any elected officials. As for due process, the minimum time for shut-off notification, as I understand it from reading this, is 45 days. This is very short notice considering how much time a lot of town residents spend outside of town for a variety of reasons. And the motion provides no assurance that the delinquent receives communications from the town. We see in the wording, it says issued and it says send a notice, but this ought to specify certified mail for that final bill and a visit from the town employee with a face-to-face meeting for the shut-off notification. And finally, a concern that a final concern would be that in the case of rented properties, the motion provides no assurance that the tenant has been notified of the landlord's delinquency and or of the shut-off. And I can think of nothing worse than a tenant suddenly getting their water shut off and having not been legally required to be notified. And again, I understand that the town has not resorted to shut-offs historically, but I think that the protection of human rights must go above the whim of elected officials.
Thank you. Mr. Foster, are you looking? Okay. Yes, sir.
Stephen Metz, 171 Coventry Lane. I oppose this change mainly on a technical basis. On the bill, it says when it's due. It doesn't say when it was issued. So when do I know when the toll starts?
Is that a question, or you're opposing it?
Well, yeah, I'm opposing it, but that was my rhetorical question.
Got
Explain
it.
why.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Paul Cage, 126 Oakwood Drive. Similar to the previous speaker, that amounts to, if I understand the wording in the two different versions, the 30 days after issued versus 30 days after due. That would be like requiring you to make a late payment charge before the bill was due. If it's due, it's not late yet. So they should come into alignment. If you want to shorten the period, that's fine, but they should be, the due point and then the penalty, not the penalty first and then it's a due. And I oppose it for that reason.
One moment, please. Mr. Friedman.
Point of information. Years ago, I intervened on behalf of a resident of this town who had a water break. They had a huge bill. I provided pro bono professional services.
I'm
to
sorry,
help.
sir, that's not a point of information.
Okay. The point of
related to the
information
meeting.
is that this person's water was shut off for lack of payment.
Yes, sir. Mr. Crane.
I apologize, I don't want to belabor the point, but I just want to make one quick comment. The point of the article is to really give our water utility better abilities to collect past due bills. If you pay your bills on time, which I think our collection rate is in the 90th percentile, so most people do, this isn't going to affect you at all. But when people don't pay their bills, we still pay the Springfield Water and Sewer Commission for the water that gets consumed. And so one of the net effects of people not paying their bills is everybody else's bill goes up. And that's why we want to have better tools to make sure that we can collect past due bills. And so we're kind of losing sight of what the bigger point of all this is, and that is to make sure that we can continue to run the water utility in a fair and equitable way for all customers. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm Steve Kennedy. I live at 11 Western Drive, and I'm in opposition to this article as written for the following reasons. I'm sure, well, first of all, we know that the bills are processed by an outfit that is not located in Long Meadow. So when the bills are processed and the bills are made, they're mailed with a permit imprint on the envelope, which does not give anyone the ability to determine the actual date of mailing. And the mailing itself has to go through at least 2 SCFs. Those are Postal Service sectional cancellation facilities. The next issue is that I'm sure all of us at some point in time look at our mailbox or our mail slot and find mail that is not addressed to our particular address, including mail that has the ZIP +4 barcode, which the Postal Service insists that the mail is going to get there without anybody ever handling it personally. It is not the obligation of a recipient of incorrectly addressed mail to put it back in the slot, or I've been told by the Postal Service, you may not write anything on the envelope. There's no indication that all of the bills that are sent out, Madam Moderator, actually get delivered. So I would suggest that bills that are not paid when due have a past due notice sent out rather than this type of, as far as I'm concerned, draconian measures.
Thank you.
So I'm opposed to it.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Tom Nerrigan, 77 Woodside Drive. Time to vote. I call the question.
Well, we may not need to vote on the call to question if there's nobody else up to speak. There is one person up to speak. Has the motion been made and seconded, however? All right, so the motion's been made and seconded to come to a calling the question. All those in favor of calling the question, please raise your cards. This requires a 2/3 majority. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your cards. The motion to call the question has been approved by 2/3 affirmative vote. We shall now come directly to a vote on the article, on the motion under the article. All those, and this requires a simple majority, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. All those opposed to the motion, please raise your blue cards. The motion fails by majority negative vote. We shall now come to Article 16.
Madam Moderator, I move that the town vote to amend Article 2 definition of the zoning and bylaw of the towns by adding the following definitions. Madam Moderator, I move in terms of the motion.
In terms of the article? Sir?
Yes, in terms of the article.
In terms of the article,
Yes.
as written. Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded. You may speak to it, Mr. Foster.
The Planning Board, Select Board, and Building Commission have requested these edits in an attempt to modernize the zoning bylaws.
Is there a Planning Board recommendation?
Madam Moderator, the Planning Board has...
Gunn?
Yes,
Name and
Walter
address?
Gunn, Long Meadow Planning Board, 1579 Long Meadow Street. The Planning Board has voted to recommend Article 16 as presented.
Thank you. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
Robert Henderson, Wilson Drive. I'm opposed because it's none of the town's business to define what a family is. As long as the number of people living in a dwelling is safe and within the capacity of the dwelling, those people should be allowed to live there.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, Louis Robin, 942 Long Meadow Street. Approximately 2 years ago, there was an issue concerning a house on...
Speak into the microphone.
Approximately 2 years ago, there was an issue concerning a house on Redfern Street, I believe. And there were some unfortunate circumstances where some residents spoke against a group home that was being put in. Would this change anything regarding that result that allowed
Mr.
that
Crane?
to continue?
No, the group homes are one of a multitude of uses that are authorized under what's called the Dover Amendment, and I believe it's a state thing driven by federal law. So that's exempt from all. They would be exempt from this if this passes. The definition of family is really just a way for a municipality to control how many unrelated people are living in a home, and really the classic examples are 10 college students living in, a 3-bedroom house, or, the issue of hot bedding for, when the casino came up, multiple people sharing a home that are just, almost like a flop house, if you will. That's really what this is driven by. The bylaws presented is really cut and paste from the town of Lexington. Most communities have this protection. In fact, I think when we discovered this issue, we were researching the group home problem, or the group home issue, but we were surprised we didn't have a definition of family. This is really kind of a baseline support protection for the community.
Is there another question, Mr. Robin?
So the group home would not be...
No impact on this, no.
Thank you.
Mr. Frieden?
If a resident has...
Name and, just for formality, name and address.
Kurt Friedman,
Thank
24
you.
Ridge. If a resident has a concern that another household may not comply with the definition of family, what do? How is this identified? And then what would the consequences be to the household where their living arrangements didn't comply with this definition of family? Would they be fined? Would they be forced to be removed from their home? What would the consequences be?
Well, could report the zoning bylaw violation to the building commissioner like they can any bylaw violation, and then the penalties for bylaw violations for zoning code bylaw are set forth in other parts of our it can be fined up to a certain amount per day if the violation persists.
Yes.
I have a question.
Can you speak right in the mic?
Carolyn Sluice, 103 Warren Terrace, Long Meadow, Mass. My
Thank you.
question is in regard to the accessory structure of 10 feet. And then down below, we have reference to different vehicles. One would be an RV. My dream is to have an RV, and my eve might have to be longer than 10 feet to get the thing to the door. So, how does that apply? Why 10 feet? That's so Mickey Mouse. Some of the older garages are already taller than 10 feet.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Crane.
If your existing garage is 10 feet, it's grandfathered if this is approved. 10 feet tall is a height so the accessory structure does not really dwarf the primary structure, and someone doesn't build a large accessory building that would be really incongruous with the primary structure and the other structures around it. 10 feet's pretty tall. I mean, I don't know how tall the RV you're looking at is,
Well, most
but
RVs are over 9 to 10, maybe. A big one would be over 11. But to to go up a little incline and then get into your garage, you're going to have an eave that's taller than 10 feet.
All right, so.
So that's my question. Why 10 feet?
Why
How did
10
you
feet?
get this out of the air?
Is there someone who can answer that?
Flip a coin, maybe, or?
We're looking for an answer to your question, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. So you could get a special permit or a variance for a taller structure based on a hardship for to store your RV.
Yeah, because
Ne-
most
next.
houses in
Ma-
in Longmeadow have 2 stories, plus they have that lovely attic. So you could even argue that aesthetically, the garage should be taller, so it would blend in.
Next, please.
Yeah.
I now have 2 questions. The first has to
Name
do-
and address, please.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Liz Rainey, 291 Deep Woods Drive. My first question has to do with the comment about the variance, please.
Speak right into the microphone,
I'm
please.
sorry.
Thank you.
There
There you go.
My first question has to do with the comment that was just made about securing a variance, where there's no language in here anywhere that I would know as a resident that I can secure a variance. My second question is, why are these all grouped together when they may not necessarily all be related? And my third question actually has to do with no more than 4 unrelated individuals living in the same structure. So if my partner and I take in the children of a friend because the friend is ill, and it is for 2 months, 3 months, or 4 months, technically, we can't do that according to this zoning change.
Is there somebody who can answer that? There's 3 questions.
Yeah. So to go, we presented the changes to the definition section of the zoning bylaws as one package, so people could, rather than continue to amend the same section with 4 different articles, we lumped it together for efficiency's sake. So these all get plugged in alphabetical order, I believe, into our zoning bylaws. But they just stand alone here. We didn't reprint the entire bylaw code to show people where they would go. And so the language on how to appeal is contained in another section of the bylaws that we didn't reprint in the warrant. Does that answer the first 2 questions?
The third question is about the unrelated.
I mean, I don't know.
No, excuse me, sir, I'm sorry. You asked me if it answered the question, and I'm going to
Well,
respond to that first.
Excuse
please.
me, all questions and answers go through me. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Madam
Thank you.
Moderator. He asked if.
Right, and that
answered
was
the
improper
question.
of him to do.
Yes, and I apologize because you
Sorry.
didn't give me a chance to respond, so I would like to ask or respond.
You
Thank
may.
Okay. No, that doesn't answer my question about grouping them all together, because if we as residents take issue with each of these individually, if they had been presented, and there are only 4 of them, had they been presented individually, they might have been passed far more quickly. But because you have citizens coming up taking exception with several of these, now to me it's a much longer process.
If
Now-
if I may interject, these can be split, and you can divide the article and take up provisions of an article separately. That is something that town meeting can do.
May I ask, so I understand what you're saying?
Mhm.
So when we go to vote on this, this requires a 2/3 vote? So when we go to vote on this, we're voting on each one individually?
If we were to separate them, they all require the 2/3, yes.
Okay.
It requires a majority to separate them, and then we vote on each one.
Okay. I understand that.
Okay.
Could you just now address my last
Thank you.
question, please?
Yes. Mr. Crane. Mr. Crane?
Sorry. I was overwhelmed with guilt. I didn't know what to do. To answer your last question,
It has to do with the arbitrary number of 4 people who aren't related living together.
and I guess I would, 4 is not arbitrary. It's really industry standard throughout the Commonwealth. And I mean, town council helped draft the bylaw, but I don't know. If you're asking me in my layman's opinion why 4 is the number, I don't know, but there's probably a good reason for it, because just about every community has it 4 or more. Like I said, it's a standard definition that's been tested in the courts, and most municipalities have adopted. Like I said, for basic, I mean, all of these things are being offered to help improve the quality of life of Long Meadow residents, not detract from it. And the reason why we've offered these as a package is because our building commissioner gets frequent complaints about issues that derive a lot from either incomplete or unclear or a lack of definitions of certain things. And so when neighbors complain about their neighbors having a garage that's too big or some other matter, we lack the tools we need to properly, address those complaints. So that really that's really why all these are offered as a package deal, to really respond to the most frequent complaints we get in the building department. In terms of hypothesizing about that individual scenario, I don't know that I could do hypotheticals on that. I think the answer would depend on the actual factors behind it. So I can't really engage in hypotheticals.
But I can apply for a variance, correct?
I believe so, yeah.
That's to Madam
Yes.
Moderator.
Yes.
Yeah, Madam Moderator.
Mr. Gunn?
Yes, there's an appeal process and it's under Massachusetts general laws. I mean, any decision by any board, whether it's us planning board or it's a ZBA, that's their process. They can take an appeal from a previous decision from another board. And for example, we can go right through this thing, accessory structure. 10 feet is pretty standard. I recently built a garage, and I can tell you it was designed for like a GM Yukon with a huge ski rack on top of it, and it is 10 feet. It's arbitrary. It seems to be the norm. But again, for somebody who wanted the RV, here's the example. You want to build a garage and say you want that first story 20 feet high. What this does, it gives a chance for your neighbors actually to speak up and appeal the probability of something that's a very enlarged, oversized structure for the neighborhood. Right now, the building commissioner gets complaints all the time for various things. I mean, not necessarily accessory structure, but we can go into family. And for example, he can't act on it. There's no definition. And that's what we're trying to do here, is trying to make definitions, give a toolkit to the building commissioner. This is not a witch hunt. He's not going out and looking for trouble. What he's trying to do is make us more of a community where the residents, the neighbors, can have a chance to complain, whether it's about a family. Nobody is going to complain about 4 unrelated children that are brought into a home because their mother is ill and it's a long-term stay. What we're looking for is examples that have already happened in town. We had a situation where an unrelated group of hockey players took over a house on William Street, and there were complaints from all the neighbors, and there's not a thing the building commissioner could do. Secondly, the concern, we've been through this when we had the casino vote. We looked back at that several years ago, the whole issue of hotbedding. We went through this concern of a situation where a house is rented out, and literally you could have 3 unrelated families using the same house over and over and over again. And I think there's been other examples of this. This is not, it's a toolkit, or part of a toolkit for the building commissioner to try to make the town more amenable. But yes, to answer your question, the short answer is yes. The zoning appeal process would be the avenue for something specific like an enlarged garage.
Miss,
I had
wanna-
no large garage questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Summer?
Cynthia Summer, 57 Farmington Avenue. I'd like to make a motion to separate the question.
All right. Is that the right approval? Yeah. So a motion to separate the question. And this would be separating them by the definitions? Okay. So by each motion to separate the motion into 4 separate sections. This requires a majority vote. All those in favor of separating the question, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. All those opposed to separating the question, please raise your blue cards. The motion to separate fails by majority negative vote. We shall now return back to discussion of the Article 16 as written. Yes, Ms. Summer.
Cynthia Summer, 57 Farmington Ave. So then I have a question about the accessory structure. Does this mean that no one is allowed to build a garage with a loft or studio above it? That's how I would read that, correct?
Mr. Gunn?
Yes, thank you, Madam Moderator. Yeah, that's exactly it. And the reason being is it's a public safety issue. It's in, I mean, I think the state building code actually is concerned about this. For example, start with carbon monoxide fumes. We don't know, the town doesn't know, the public safety people don't know who's living upstairs or in a loft or whatever's going on over a garage, and especially if it's not properly insulated or fireproofed, something really detrimental could happen. I could just start with carbon monoxide poisoning. So yes, to answer your question, there would not be a permitted use with this. And that's why we get into the definition of story. Story locks in on that, and story gives the definition of what is a floor, which we don't have in our current bylaw. So that story is in the garage definition becomes an important part, that you really, the garage is for a garage. Upstairs could possibly be for storage, but actually for habitation, it definitely was not wanted in this bylaw amendment.
Yes, Let me, excuse me, Mr. Gunn. He was in line
sorry, go ahead.
first. Thanks. Yes, sir.
Paul Cage, 126 Oakwood Drive. I recently purchased the house that I grew up in. I've been in town here for 4 generations. I know the town really well, and I've seen many structures where there are rooms above a garage. Does it mean where, if it's separate, or can it be attached to the house and that would be okay? I see it in a precedent set everywhere. And I would believe that those safety issues would be addressed during the planning or approval stage of a permit. And to have if I wanted to expand my single garage and make it wider and have more bays and have another additional room above it, it's now currently a freestanding structure. Are you telling me that this would mean that I could not do that?
No, you're not allowed to do that today. What this means, and let's be honest, yeah, let's cut through it, okay? Somebody built a garage. They have up above the top. They've got a big space. Oh no, it's just an attic space. I'm not going to use it for anything because you can't under our current bylaws. Next thing you know, the plywood goes down on the ceiling joists, and then the drywall goes up, and next thing you know, you have a studio in there in violation of our bylaws. And the reason why we can't enforce that is because when he's doing the inspection, it's not a story. It's it doesn't meet the definition of a story because we don't have one. So you're not allowed to do that today. Clarifying the definitions gives the building commissioner better tools to enforce that part of our bylaws. If there is, in terms of like what's allowed, obviously everything that was done before that part of the bylaw was implemented was grandfathered. So there's grandfathering to take into consideration as well, but basically you're not allowed to do that today. And this helps clarify that.
Madam Moderator, if I had another question.
Yes.
So if the structure was then attached to the main living structure with the appropriate means, that would then be part of the second story of the first structure?
It depends. It depends on the design of it and other factors. So I can't really until you see a plan, you can't really say yes or no to that. But generally speaking, attached, yes, you can have a second story.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Just
Yes.
have another question, sorry.
Say name, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, Monahan, Frank Smith Road. I don't want to.
A little bit right into the
I don't want
mic.
to one-up Mr. Cage, but I'm 5 generations. He's 4, I'm 5.
And
this is a question, I think, for the gentleman in the green sport coat. Yes. If we vote for all of these together, it doesn't state anywhere that you can apply for a variance. I mean, you're telling us we can, but what if we vote for them?
It's definitely, I don't want to take time here. I can actually look it up and read it to you. It's actually one of the first articles in the zoning bylaws.
Oh, it is.
Actually allows for the process of appeal. And in fact, every approval goes through with an appeal. Any decision by the code enforcement officer or the building commissioner can be appealed.
And
It's
also,
a built-in right.
Ms. Monahan.
Yep, Ms. Moderator. I have another question. When you keep referring to grandfathered, like who's grandfathered and who isn't? I mean, it's kind of you're using it kind of as a vague term. And I'm just curious.
Any time a bylaw is adopted, say we vote on approve this tonight,
Yes.
everybody who has an existing structure would be grandfathered. And this happens with lots that were non-conforming. We call them non-conforming today, but they were in existence before, say, the subdivision law came to effect in 1955. Same thing is true with this. Any bylaw we adopt at any time, yes, previous to that date, it's grandfathered.
Got it. Thank you.
Are ready to come to vote? All right. This vote requires a 2/3 majority vote. All those in favor of the motion under the article, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your blue cards. The motion passes by 2/3 declaration. We shall now come to Article 17.
The last article. Madam Moderator, I move that the town vote to amend Article 4, Section B, use in the residential zones of the zoning bylaws of the town in the following respects. Madam Moderator, I move in terms of the article.
Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded. You may speak to it, Mr. Foster.
The town receives numerous complaints in regards to the above actions to be prohibited. By amending the zoning bylaw in this manner, the building commissioner will be empowered to address them.
Is there a planning board recommendation? Mr. Gunn.
Yes, Madam Moderator, Walter Gunn, Lomito Planning Board. The Planning Board has voted to recommend Article 17.
Thank you. Discussion.
Robert Henderson, Wilson Drive. I have a question for town council. I'm having trouble construing the third part. Accessory uses shall not include the keeping of a construction dumpster, comma, storage device commonly known as a pod for longer than a 60-day period. I find that ambiguous whether this is talking about a construction dumpster, a storage device, a pod, whether a pod is a storage device, a pod is a construction dumpster. I'd just like him to speak to that ambiguity.
I think an amendment placing the word "or" instead of the comma would be in order.
Thank you.
Okay.
Stephanie Jasmine, 123 Englewood Road. I have a couple concerns about this. I sat through another town meeting where this had been brought up before, and I understand why it's being brought up. There's a resident in town who's parking a lot of vehicles on the front lawn, but residents at that time had brought up some concerns that made sense to me about why this bylaw may pose some problems. Some people in this town have very small driveways, and so they're not allowed to park on the roads at night, and when they have family coming to visit, they'll park on the lawn. This bylaw would not allow that. Also, the 20% area and how it's determined about where you can have your driveway, I'm not sure that all driveways in town conform to this as it stands right here. Some front lawns are very small. Some driveways, take up most of the front yard. So those concerns made sense to me in terms of not allowing people to park on the front lawn under special circumstances where they had family visiting, and this would prohibit them from doing it.
Mr. Friedman.
Kurt Friedman, 24 Ridge. First, a question. How is a registered utility trailer categorized under this, this warrant article?
Is there an answer?
It is a storage device.
you currently, trailers in the front yard are currently not allowed
I have
for more than a certain amount of time.
A registered, excuse me,
Mr.
Madam
Friedman.
Moderator, a registered utility trailer parked in my driveway, which could be considered a storage device as well, is that allowed or is that forbidden? Would that be allowed or forbidden underneath with this
Mr.
proposal?
Gunn or Mr. Crane?
The intent of this article does not contemplate trailers. There are already restrictions on trailers. But that's not what this was intended by this. Yeah, the current bylaw already prohibits trailers in the front yard. So the current bylaw reads, accessory uses shall not include the parking, storing, or maintaining of any other type of trailer, motorhome, boat, recreational vehicle upon the property for over 48 hours, except within a totally enclosed garage or to the rear of the secondary setback line with suitable natural screening. So that means you can keep your trailer in your front yard for 2 days and then it's going to go in the backyard or in a garage. That's current. And let me say, this really is one of the complaints against somebody's working on a project on their house. My neighbors recently would probably have reason to complain. We want to be able to allow people to improve their homes and do projects, but sometimes either pods or dumpsters can really stick around for a long time. We get some complaints about that. There really is no means to regulate that. And so we are proposing this to give the building commissioner means to have people remove dumpsters after a reasonable amount of time. Dumpsters can become a health safety issue, so can pods, depending on what's stored in them. The proposed language does have a relief valve for people who run into mitigating circumstances, and they can get relief from the building commissioner to have it in the driveway longer.
Excuse me, Mr. Friedman, our bylaws state that a voter is not entitled to speak more than 2 times on one question until others who have not spoken have had an opportunity to do so, and a voter is not entitled to speak more than 3 times on one question without first obtaining leave of the meeting to do so. So we'll just ask for next speaker. Yes, sir.
Hi, good evening, Madam Moderator. Scott Soares, 39 Albemarle Road. I'm opposed to this amendment primarily because of the lack of specificity with item 2 relative to parking vehicles in the front yard. From time to time, especially with the severe weather that we've been having more recently, we have 4 cars in our driveway. If we want to snowplow that driveway or we want to snow blow the driveway, we need to put the vehicles on our lawn from time to time. The way this is written now, if any one of our neighbors had a problem, they made a complaint, we could ultimately be called in to have to address this issue rather than just have our vehicles parked in the front lawn. So I oppose this article.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Robert Henderson, Williston Drive. I would like to amend Part 3 for the purpose of clarity. So it would read, adding Section B, 1.1H, accessory uses shall not include the keeping of a construction dumpster, strike the comma, and instead, or a storage device commonly known as a pod for longer than a 60-day period without permission from the inspector of buildings.
Can you bring that in writing, please? What's that? She wrote it? Okay. So there's a motion in Section 3, accessory uses shall not include the keeping of a construction dumpster, strike the comma, insert or storage device. Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded. Did you want to speak to it? No? Did anybody want to speak to it? Then we'll come, yes, sir.
Make a recommendation. I didn't quite hear what you said. Does it say and or? It probably
No, it just
should say
says or.
Okay.
Or a storage device commonly known as a pod.
All right. I just thought maybe it'd be and/or, but it's my recommendation.
Ready to come to a vote on the amendment to add the or. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your blue card. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your blue card. The motion to amend passes by majority affirmative vote. Are we ready to come to a vote on the amended article? Motion? All right. This requires a 2/3 majority vote. All those in favor of the amended motion, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your blue cards. The motion passes or is approved by 2/3 declaration affirmative vote. A motion to dissolve the meeting is now in order. Second? All those in favor of dissolving the special town meeting, raise your cards. All those opposed? I declare that the special town meeting of October 2016 is now dissolved.